First and foremost, welcome to the workshop, Concept of God in Islam, hosted by Muntada, al-Muntada للتعريف بالإسلام. So, al-Muntada, as you guys know, was established quite a while back. Its objective is not only to introduce non-Muslims to Islam, but also to train young Muslims like yourselves on how to present Islam and how to confront the challenges of being a Muslim in the modern world, and basically how to be able to take up and make a rational case for Islam in the face of secularism, atheism, Christianity, and other forms of intellectual attacks against the Muslim world. And we have with us our guest today, our brother Abdullah al-Andalusi. Brother Abdullah is both a very good friend and an international renowned speaker on Islam. So he has lectured on topics of Islam and secularism, atheism, democracy, Islam and science, transgender, LGBTQ, feminism. He's basically covered a wide range of topics. He is also the head of the Muslim Debate Initiative, which I strongly advise you to follow up on and to consult some of their activities. The topic we want to discuss today is the concept of God in Islam. And one of the reasons we chose this topic is precisely because it is foundational and central to all of the various issues I had just mentioned, from feminism to atheism to God to secularism, LGBTQ and whatnot. And especially in a secular age in which the question of God is bracketed off as being irrelevant, or in the so-called age of science where the question of God is considered to be irrelevant and marginal, we want to reapproach this idea so that we can reinsert God in the life of Muslims and inshallah in society in general. So without further ado, I will leave the rest of the talk to our brother Abdullah, inshallah ta'ala.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salamu ala Nabi Kareem Muhammad wa ala tayyibin wa sahbihi salihin. So, alhamdulillah, thank you for attending. Thank you for Murtada for organizing this and for inviting me to the beautiful Levantine city of Beirut. And of course, I always enjoy going to different parts of the Mediterranean. So I'm at the other end of the Mediterranean from you guys, where the water comes in. And you guys, I'm the gatekeeper for your ocean, or your sea rather. So, khair inshallah, I was invited to kind of discuss concept of God in Islam. I think last 6 years ago, I was invited to discuss more secularism, but now the questions have moved beyond secularism to, does God exist? So I don't know if things are getting worse or better, but khair inshallah. First and foremost, I'm not here to defend dogma, or a dogma like taqleed, with blind taqleed, yeah? I'll try and use some Arabic words if I use something too technical English words. So I'm not here to defend blind taqleed. I'm certainly not here to defend the status quo of the Muslim world, its current technological degradation and it being mutakhallif, backward and so on. That's not Islam. Islam is actually a rejuvenating force, a forward-thinking force, which is why it turned backward 7th century Arabs in Arabia into a civilization that could rival and overtake the Persians and the Romans and lead science and technology. Now, none of these rational arguments that I'm going to present are new. None of these arguments are actually not also in the Quran. And none of these arguments were unknown to the classical scholars. In fact, if the classical scholars of Islam was to listen to me talk, they would say, "Oh, Abdullah, he's good for primary school teaching, maybe, or kindergarten, or was it teaching for nursery? Maybe if I'm lucky, right?" So compared to then, they had much more advanced discussions. But inshallah, I think we'll go through the fundamentals of Islamic beliefs first and foremost, and make that as strong as possible, but also critically engage it. Now, one of the things I've noticed is that when anyone is on a platform and there's no one opposing them, anyone can sound convincing, right? When no one's criticizing them. And this is why MDI, Muslim Debate Initiative, Hiwar, right? Is about, we do debates, we prefer debates than lectures, because it's much more it's much stronger to prove your point in the face of criticism and an opponent with equal time to you to argue against you than just speaking out loud. So throughout this lecture, in fact, I will prize the student or the attendee that challenges anything I say. I will prize that more than someone just says, yes sir, no sir, right? I prefer the former. If I didn't do that, I wouldn't be Muslim. I would still be a Christian somewhere in England, or a secular, nominal kind of Christian. So khair, inshallah, let's kind of get on to the discussion. So the concept of God in Islam, what you'll find is that God, since it encompasses a whole range of things, including the creation of the universe, human purpose and meaning, it will touch upon a whole number of topics other than just simply the idea of Tawheed that you understand. And I say the idea of Tawheed that you understand, because if you reflect about Tawheed in its broadest sense, everything is connected to Tawheed. Because ultimately, I would say that Islam is the only religion, with the possible exception of Judaism, that completely separates the infinite from the finite. It doesn't mix the two. A polytheist, one who worships creatures, animals, the sun, the volcanoes, if you're a Hawaiian, whatever, they attribute to finite things, to mahdud, things that are mahdud. They attribute them to things which are ghair mahdud. They say this is God, even though it's a celestial object, or it's a volcano, or it's a statue, or it has a face, it has two eyes, and so on. So physical features which are limited, which you think that's the opposite of unlimited, of an infinite God, something that's ghair mahdud, right? You can't be mahdud and ghair mahdud at the same time, right? Infinite and finite, so you can't. But likewise, I'd also argue that you might think only religion, but what about, let's say, atheists are not technically a religion, but even they mix the infinite and the finite together. Their God just doesn't happen to be a statue. They think they make the universe into the statue, or they make material existence into the God that they worship, so to speak. They don't pray to it, but they certainly consider it to be the source of all things, the source that creates everything, and the source that was uncreated in itself. Although, depending on what type of atheist you speak to, they might believe that they don't believe the universe has a intellect or an intention behind it. Although Benedict Spinoza, otherwise known as Baruch Spinoza, that Spanish Jewish thinker, well, wasn't really Jewish anymore, but he believed that the universe was God, and everything, and we were just deterministic processes within this kind of almost like an atheist God, really. That the universe itself was God, and there was no point praying to the universe because the universe didn't care about you, but it somehow had some kind of intellect or some kind of will or desire, irada, right, a will. So you get different types of atheists as well. Although in theory, I suppose, if you believe the universe is a God, then that makes you a type of theist or a pantheist, but I won't get into details anyway. So today we're going to be splitting or separating the finite from the infinite. And that is fundamentally the Tawheed of Islam. And it's unique to Islam, with the possible exception, you could say, of Judaism as well, or maybe religions that were influenced by Islam after Islam came, like Sikhism possibly, to some extent. Right, khair inshallah. So let's begin. So the aim of this workshop is quite simple. It's to equip you with the ability to detect misconceptions and avoid them and remove them from others who are sincere, of course. If someone really doesn't want to get rid of their misconceptions, then you can't do much about it. If it gives them comfort, or it means they have to radically review their entire life, or they think they were enjoying what they were used to, and they don't want to go outside their comfort zone, you can't really force someone to have ikhlas, right, in sincerity. If someone wants to be a munafiq, you can't change that. But at least you can give them the evidence, and hopefully people around them might change. And of course, on the Day of Judgment, you can bear witness against them that you gave them the message. But anyway, khair inshallah. The second point is to give Muslims a solid and robust concept of God and show how it accords to Islamic teachings. So we're not just going to we're going to go through a lot of rational kind of arguments, but we're going to also show that these rational arguments coincide perfectly with Islamic arguments in the Quran. And everything you're going to be hearing is actually all arguments I've plagiarized from the Quran. I just put it in different words, basically. The last point is to remove misconceptions from attendees about the Islamic concept of God. Muslims have misconceptions about their own religion, even about what Tawheed even means, or how to understand it. Even though there might be whole movements that just focus on Tawheed, 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 but even they don't realize the full ramifications of what it means to believe in complete and absolute Tawheed in its purest sense. So let's kind of continue. So what's the cause of misconceptions? There are two sources. One, uncritically accepted beliefs or claims, meaning people do taqleed to an idea, to an aqidah. They didn't check it. They didn't ask any questions about it. They just took it. My parents were following it. Or, the West is technologically, militarily superior. They must be on the haqq for everything else of their beliefs. It's like saying that, the Romans, at the time of the Roman Empire, they're the superior civilization. Maybe Jupiter is and all the other gods of the Roman Empire are true. Right? No. So typical dogma or beliefs that are done taqleed to is the idea that the purpose of life is to enjoy life. Who told you that? Where'd you get the idea from? It's just told to you, usually through adverts that are selling you things, of course. And belief, for example, that Jesus is God and man at the same time. Many beliefs that Christians would adopt. No offense to any Christians here, but it's a creed. Having come from a Christian background, it's a creed that we were generally told to believe in. So that's the first cause. The second cause of misconceptions is the false assumptions we make when we approach a problem. I'm going to give you an example. It's a riddle. I want you guys to see if you can answer it. It's in English, but I'll try. It should be simple and straightforward. So there's a father and a son, right? A father and son, they're involved in a car accident, and both are badly hurt. They are both taken to separate hospitals. When the boy is taken in for an operation, the doctor says, I can't do surgery because this is my son. Because you're not allowed to operate on your own family, right? You might be nervous, right? How is it possible? Sorry?
No doctor.
Oh, you went straight forward. Yeah. Yes. But some people don't understand it, right? They think it's a riddle, so that it must be something tricky. You have to think about it. When the most obvious answer eludes them, because they make the misconception that they don't realize that. They think when you say doctor, you associate that as a masculine term, associated with a male doctor. So you make the assumption, and you don't realize you're making the assumption. And we're going to find a lot of misconceptions that you yourself believe about Islam itself through this, and hopefully get rid of them and clear them off. How do we detect misconceptions? Quite simply, the first one is contradiction. If you notice any contradictions in your beliefs, that's a big, massive red flag. As we say, that what you're believing in is incorrect, or there's something else going on at work. So if I was to say the sky is completely blue, and the sky is also completely red at the same time, that's a contradiction. You can say the sky is blue and red if there's like a mixture of clear skies, and let's say the sun is setting and it reflects off clouds and it produces a red hue. That can happen, but to say it's completely blue and completely red at the same time, it's impossible. Or a square circle, or a married bachelor. A bachelor is like a single guy, right? You can't be married and single at the same time. The second point, false argument. An argument is basically when someone uses an evidence. They say, I have an evidence, and then from the evidence, they try to explain the evidence, and then explaining it is basically called an argument, right? Or an explanation for that. And so it's basically an argument. A false argument is one where you have no evidence for a claim. So you say the purpose of life is to enjoy life, but you have no evidence for this. Therefore, it's not an argument, because you haven't given any evidence for it. No dalil, right? Second point is, the argument does not follow from the evidence. So if I was to say Muslims do bad things, therefore that shows Islam is bad. There's no connection between Islam and the actions of Muslims, because Muslims are not robots with Islamic programming. They are human beings which can choose to follow or not follow Islamic teachings, and also not even understand Islamic teachings due to the ignorance. So it doesn't follow that just because Muslims do bad things as an evidence, that follows the argument, it connects to the argument of, therefore Islam is bad. That's a wrong argument. Some people use logical fallacies, but you don't need to memorize all the types of logical fallacies like straw man fallacy or there's a huge number of them. I'm not really going to go through them, but just to notice that it doesn't follow, doesn't connect. So a definition of a valid argument, it must have evidence, which is some information or reasoning we can detect, and a valid possible explanation behind the evidence. And you might think, are you sure? Because what if I was arguing for people must do vaccinations, right? I'm not arguing about something in a fact of the past. I'm talking about what people should be doing. Well, actually what you're doing is you're saying that people should have vaccinations. Why? Because you've observed it in the past, or there's information or statistical data in the past that shows it prevents disease, and therefore, if you want to prevent disease, you should implement the same policy, right? So you actually are talking about a fact, which you're then using to say, if you want this, you have to implement something that's worked before in the same situation. So that's what a definition of a valid argument is. Anyone have any contentions with that? That's pretty straightforward. Okay, finish on. How are we going to structure this? So they said that there'll be 2 breaks, so I kind of put them in the logical places between each main segment. Does God exist? Then, is God evil? And the next topic after that will be what relations are between man and God, or what relations between man and God should we expect? So basically, if God exists, what does it matter to us, or does he even care about us, does he even know about us? These are the kind of questions that we're going to ask. So pretty standard stuff. So this is a bit of a workshop, so I'm not going to just be giving you a khutbah. I'm going to be basically challenging you guys to produce arguments and counter-arguments against positions, and just relaying arguments that you've heard of, and counter-arguments against Islam that you've also heard of as well. So please feel free to bring it up. In fact, I'll be insisting on it. So, does God exist? There are basic 3 questions that I want to ask today. Firstly, what is the definition of God? What are the arguments against his existence? And how do we know God exists? So I'm not going to go for number 3 yet, because that's going to be, you could say, following up. But I want to ask firstly, what is the definition of God? So how would you define God? If you were to explain it to a child, how would you explain what God is? And what arguments have you heard against his existence, or denying his existence, or demanding evidence for existence? What arguments have you heard? I should give you, what should we say, 10, 15 minutes? Or should I say 10 minutes? 10 minutes to quickly just jot down a few, and I'm going to then go around and ask you what you've come up with. You can discuss and collaborate amongst yourselves if you're on the same table if you want. Discuss what you have so you can pull your arguments together. So I'm not going to ask every single individual, but just so we have like one table there, one table there, one table and one table there. So speak amongst yourselves and produce an answer to what is the definition of God and what are the arguments you've heard against his existence. First two, not the third one. Okay, yeah, ikhwan wa ikhwat. Time's up. So, let's see what you've come up with. Can you select a spokesperson for your each of your tables to represent? So I'll start counterclockwise. So, you guys, he's a spokesman. Okay, fine. Alaikum salam.
We came up with first of all definition of God. We had the creator, sustainer, all-powerful, mighty, knowing, unique, all-merciful, all-wise, etc. from the Asma Allah al-Husna. Okay, definitions about that. Many people would say those are only words, those are only things that we can call someone. Nah, بالعربي, I don't know. Anyways, I'm so sorry.
Asma wa sifat?
Yeah. Okay, but if you can look into them, they are actually facts that are in God that you can look them up through his actions, through the things that he's done to our prophets and to us. The arguments of his existence were the evolution
against.
I'm so sorry. I misread it. Arguments against his existence were the evolution, where an atheist might say that we started as specks and then we evolved as, as a creature, then became fish, dinosaurs, and whatever. The multiverse, which is practically people say that there's another universe outside this universe, and there are many others. And actually, scientists have proved this thing wrong by saying that a universe has to go to a certain size or something, unless and if it won't do that, it will collapse. Chaos, which is what many people say, that everything is chaotic. Like, for example, riots are chaotic, but as a matter of fact, everything has a mathematical calculation, and everything will happen as it has been calculated. For example, the eruption of a volcano, you might say it's quite chaotic, but actually people will have ways to sustain it, and that's through what's it called? Mathematical calculations and mathematical rules. The problem of evil, which is what many people actually counterattack us by saying, why is God here and there are terrorists, there are many other evil creations in this world? Well, it's just qada and qadar and some other things from the devil. The lack of applicability of physics laws at T0, which is basically, if this, where is this, a pen?
I think so. I hope so.
If this pen moved alone, but it won't move alone, nothing moves alone. And thank you, that is all.
Okay. Very good. Sister at the back. I tell you what, do you want to just have a microphone? Can you pass that? So start with a definition.
So we're just going to add to what you said. Don't repeat anything.
Yeah, if you don't, you can just say that he's covered something. Just cover what you think he hasn't covered.
Okay. So for what is the definition of God? We said the Creator, the One. He's infinite. He has no beginning and no end. We also mentioned the 99 names, and he's like the controller of everything on earth. And then arguments for against his existence. We also said people usually say there's no tangible proof that God actually exists, and so there's so much suffering in the world. So like why? And we also talked about the power of choice. And if he already knows our destiny, then why did he create us? And he doesn't need us, so why did he create us? Like we give no benefit to God, so why would he create us? And lastly, also the scientific arguments they sometimes use against God. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, that's it. Inshallah.
They cover it all.
They covered it all, yeah. They probably said, we're caught with nothing. Let's just say that everyone else has covered it before us. Yeah? All right, yeah, drop mic, yeah. Could you... Okay, yeah. So just pass it and then I'll just give the assistant one out. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, so regarding the definition of God, they already said it, but we're gonna add a word, al-mudabbir, which we couldn't find a translation to it in English, but okay.
Disposal of affairs. Disposal of affairs.
Okay. So regarding the arguments, we came up with 3 prime arguments that people usually use against God's existence. One, that there's no physical proof that he exists. Mostly scientists and atheists use that. Second argument, how did he come into existence? So he created us, but who created him? A third argument, how does evil exist if God exists, which they already said it. Okay, so these are the prime arguments. And lastly, how do we know God exists? All creations that exist are prime proof, so basically the earth, the universe, us, everything. And our constant wanderings of how did we get here. So basically us as humans, we have this instinct to know, like, how did we get here? What is our purpose? All of these things like lead to us, like there has to be a God. And that's
Is that an argument for or against?
that's the last step. How do we know God exists?
Oh, okay. Oh, so you have to cover number 3, but it's all right. Okay, inshallah. Okay, so interesting points.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I can I add something?
You want to add something? Yeah, inshallah.
Because the thing is, concerning the definition of God, you could argue that there is no proper definition for God, because part of knowing God is intuition, so fitra. So some philosophers or even scholars might argue for not having a definition in the sense of mahiyya or haqiqa. But we can have a definition in terms of attributes. We can say immaterial, personal, agent, who is omniscient, omnipotent. We can give characteristics, but we cannot really give a proper definition.
Well, Asma wa Sifat would be, I suppose you'd call types, characteristics, I suppose, but then again, how would you define anything? Because even the classical scholars like Ghazali and many others said, how do you really know the essence of something, what something really is beyond its attributes? But it's a philosophical discussion. I would say that what I initially mentioned was ghair mahdud. So we have mahdud, and then we just know that we define God by what He's not. So He's not us, or He's not limited. Was the initial definition I kind of let slip. But khair, inshallah. It's to know what is truly the essence of something is a different question. That even people question as to what can you know the true essence of anything in the material world beyond just the attribute, because what you're seeing is just the attributes of it.
I'm not saying you can or you cannot, but I'm saying maybe you can. The definition of God doesn't. It's mostly definition of attributes. What He is in terms of attributes, but you cannot really. Some people might argue that you can have a definition that will give you the proper picture of an essence of something, of some things, not everything. But this is just what I wanted to.
Well, as I said, that's a bit more of a philosophical question. Like I could say, a chair, its attribute is that it has 4 legs, and you might say that's to do with its essence. You say, well, no, because that's not what 4 legs is not what the chair is made out of. For example, right? So there's a difference between that, and of course. Anyway, I mean, that's a what we call ontology, which I'm not going to go into. But Asma wa Sifat is sufficient. Definition Asma wa Sifat will be sufficient. Okay, so you have a... Sure? Oh, you do have a... Okay, you do have a contribution. All right.
My mistake. The perfect one and only one who created all of the existence and deserved worship without any need from anyone.
Okay, so then deserved worship without any need from anyone, the perfect.
He created without the need of anyone.
Right, so I'm going to kind of rock the boat a little bit by asking certain questions about the suggestions you've given me in terms of definition. So, what is, you said all merciful, right? Was one of the definitions. God is all merciful. This is English language, of course, English language definition. What's the Arabic for all merciful? Rahman Rahim. No, that's the definition of merciful. Where is all merciful?
The ultimate of.
Yeah, but all merciful means like mutlaq, like He can't be anything other than that. As in, He can't do anything other than mercy. Everything He does, I suppose, in fact, He can't do anything except mercy. So He can't punish, for example.
No, we don't mean that.
Yeah, but so, and that's one of these misconceptions that's crept in. We can blame Christians for that. Actually, Muslims have been borrowing from Christians for a long time. Well, mainly after colonialism. No, in Arabic it's Rahman Rahim. That's it. Khalas, right? Nothing more than that. In English, people tend to say all merciful. And then this brings up certain problems, because if something is all merciful, that means He can't even be punishing even once. Because to punish once is not all 100% mercy. And the Christians encounter this problem because they say that God is love. And then how does God punish? Why does God punish you then? Which is an argument in the Quran, by the way. They say that we're the children of God. And I say, then why does God punish you then if you're the children of God? Right?
It's just.
Sorry?
It's just as well. So it's not just mercy.
Exactly, which is a point, which is what I was saying, is be careful of saying all merciful just because you might have heard it from a standard way of speaking about God, at least in the English language, because that was basically dominated by Christians and their theology, or at least Protestant Christianity.
Well, we can say all powerful.
Yeah, you can say all powerful, but even in the Quran it just says the powerful, right? So.
I think Surah Al-Ikhlas gives a complete definition for Allah.
Yes. Saying that He's one. Yes, of course.
He's the one.
And he doesn't beget. But I'm talking about a a specific definition of what what idea we're talking about if we're going to explain it to a child?
So we can derive the definition from Surah Al-Ikhlas, which is a complete definition. I think.
Allahu Samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad.
So,
Wa lam yakun lahu kufuwan ahad. Yeah, nothing is like unto him. Yeah. Okay. I mean, there's nothing like him. Yes.
Yes. And he's not. No one is co-equal to him. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. So no one likes him, and no one is co-equal to him.
The point is not to just plagiarize the Quran, but to understand the meaning behind that, which is the whole point of this discussion. So let's see what I've kind of at least produced and have a read of it. So I kind of said that he has infinite power, but defined as something that's inexhaustible and insurmountable. Sorry for the long English words on that. Inexhaustible means it doesn't run out, and insurmountable means it can't encounter obstacles. Nothing can block it or stop it. Because the definition of something that is غير محدود means there's no had, there's no boundaries, yes? Whereas we are mahdud, limited, which means that if something has no had, there's nothing to stop it. There's nothing to stop it. And of course, if it has no limitation, no had, then it doesn't run out. Right? It can't run out of stuff. It can't say, "Oh, I've run out of energy now." Right? And now this is just a definition we're going to go with. Then we're going to move on to how do we know God exists? How do we know this definition is true? But first, let's start with a definition I think we can agree on. I use the word power because in physics, power is defined as the ability to get work done. So power means that God can cause things to exist and move things. If you want to take it in a very kind of a basic understanding. And the ability to initiate actions has the ability to initiate, to start to do something, to choose to do something, which is irada. Will, irada. Yeah? So it has will. That's the definition we're going with. Minimal definitions. Why? Because any human, I'm going to make a claim now. I'm not going to substantiate it. We're going to wait for me to substantiate that. But my claim is that all human beings without wahi can come to that conclusion. Without revelation, you can come to that conclusion. You don't need wahi to come to that conclusion. The Quran expects people to come to this conclusion already. That's why shirk can't be forgiven. Why the mushriks have no excuse, because they should have been able to deduce that shirk is wrong. And you might think, is there an example? There's an example of where someone who's mushrik became monotheist just by thought. Well, there is. There's many, but I'll give you one famous example, and it's one that the atheists use without realizing that it contradicts themselves. So they use a Greek philosopher. Since we're in this part of the Mediterranean now, I'm going to go Greek, ancient Greek. The philosopher Xenophanes. Okay, so they use a certain claim he made. He said that if cows had gods, they would make the gods to look like cows. Right? And atheists always use that. They say, haha, you see, it just shows that God is a human construction, human concept. And it's like, no, you see, Xenophanes was refuting polytheism. He was refuting shirk and idol worship and multiple ilah, which are statues and things. Look like humans. They had, they have human characteristics of like they lie and they make mistakes and they forget stuff, right? It's not really what is befitting God, right? Befitting something. And so he rejected them, and he instead believed in one God who was ghair mahdud. So that's why I say that I don't know why atheists use him, because he was a monotheist. He was a muwahid. And he deduced it just by thinking about it. So when atheists quote him, they're saying, I agree with you, but you're refuting shirk, you're not refuting tawheed. Xenophanes became a muwahid purely through thinking about the religion of the Greeks. Anyway, so now there's a number of different counter-arguments. Let's see what I've got for that. So arguments against his existence. I'm trying to boil it down to roughly 5. So one is that we haven't seen God, so why believe in him if we wouldn't believe in unicorns until we see them? Right? That might be an argument they bring up. It's going to be an ironic one in this session. In a second, I'll tell you why, after I go through the list. The second one is science can provide an alternative explanation for everything. That's a claim. Sorry? Oh, Oops, sorry, my apologies, because this one's not connected to that one. Yes, the same one. If God exists, why is there evil? Which is not really an argument against God, but an argument against his nature. Because as even an atheist philosopher, Stephen Law, who I'm going to be inshallah debating later on this year in the UK, he said that, well, I mean, technically it's not an argument against God, it's just an argument. I mean, maybe God might be what you think evil or not good or whatever you want to call that. If God exists, why do religious people do bad things? I only put that down because a friend of mine who's living in the Middle East said that that's a common argument that he hears, is that they say, oh, how comes religious people are corrupt? Well, not every single religious person, but let's say some sheikh that they know, let's say, oh, he's corrupt, he's not really religious, and he acts in a duplicitous way, like he lies and cheats and what have you. And last one is, pride is condemned for people, yet God demands people worship him and punish them if they do not. So let's actually go through all these counter-arguments and see if they actually stack up. So why haven't we seen God? So if God was meant for us to believe in him, why can't we see him? Well, the thing is this, I'd argue you could certainly see him with your aql, so to speak, as a metaphor here, which is you can think and deduce he exists. And we're going to come to, that's a claim, I'm going to justify that, but that's my initial response to that. Science can provide an alternative explanation for everything. Well, no, it can't, because firstly, you don't know everything. Was it? What happened to this?
Okay. Did you move to another slide?
No. I'm just responding. I'm giving some responses. And of course, science... Okay, let me give you an example. Imagine there's two goldfish in a bowl. Okay, the bowl is not transparent. You can't see outside the bowl. It's just all they know, their universe is just a bowl of water, some oxygen in it, some pebbles in the bottom, and some maybe some food, like a weed or whatever, sweet seaweed that grows. Not the one that you smoke, but the seaweed that grows from the right. So one goldfish is an atheist, and the other goldfish is not an atheist, and they have a debate. So the goldfish that's atheist says, "How do you know that we in this goldfish bowl and everything in it was created when I've counted every single pebble in the goldfish bowl, and I haven't found the creator?" Well, that was the equivalent argument to say that, oh, science hasn't encountered God. Because science can only measure what's in the universe. And when scientists make speculation as to what's outside the universe, that is speculation, or dhann, as we say, right? They are making assumptions. The multiverse argument is quite funny. I'll cover it now, actually, because I think I should. The argument is that, well, why is everything in the universe the way it is? And they say because there's infinite other universes where they've tried every different combination. And I say, okay. And then the argument is, like, I haven't seen God, and I don't believe in God, like I don't believe in unicorns, fairies, and goblins. Okay, you know what goblins are, right? I'm going to have to do cultural checks just in case you haven't seen the same movies. But by dint of the fact you speak English, I can only assume that, unfortunately, Hollywood has spread its cultural tendrils here as well. I'll say, okay, then how do you explain the universe being the way it is? And they say, oh, I believe in multiverses. And I say, okay, yeah, you've lied to me. And they say, what do you mean? I haven't lied to you. So, you said you didn't believe in goblins, fairies, and unicorns. And I say, no, I don't believe in goblins, fairies, and unicorns. I say, well, yes, you do, because you believe in infinite universes, right? I say, yeah. Infinite possibilities? Yeah. That means every single thing that can be possible exists somewhere. So somewhere there's a horse with a horn on its head. And somewhere there's a little creature that looks like maybe a tiny little monkey that developed wings, perhaps. And there's a short green thing with claws and pointy ears. So you do believe in goblins, unicorns. Maybe not in this universe, but somewhere else. And Lord of the Rings probably existed somewhere in some particular universe outside of our universe. And that's the problem, is that when you try to deny the obvious, you fall into absurdity. You fall into something that becomes much more, becomes absurd. And they actually fall into the same argument that he was trying to deny. But also notice how, in denying an infinite God, they have to go to something else that's infinite. right? Infinite universes, right? And then they say, then the other argument would be, well, how do we, okay, they say infinite universes, and there's one major flaw that no one ever thinks about when they hear this argument. They say that infinite universes have been created and every combination is tried. I say, okay, even if I accept that's true, even if I accept it, who's creating them? Who's making them?
Big Bang.
Sorry?
Big Bang. They said.
No, the Big Bang is basically the beginning of a universe. But what causes it to exist? Give me solid scientific data, information, data, proof, basically, physical proof. None. Well, exactly. But I'll tell you this: there's as much evidence for infinite universes, as there is for Thor and Zeus and Jupiter and Hubal and everyone like this, right? It's the same amount of evidence, right? But when a guy wearing a white lab coat says it to you, that sounds reasonable. But a guy wearing a white jalabiya and a topi, oh, that's unreasonable. So, even though it's the same color, right? If God exists, why is there evil? That argument, again, that's not really an argument against God's existence. So we'll move past that and onto the second session for that. If God exists, why do religious people do bad things? That's, you know what, the problem is this, and this actually comes from an unfortunate human tendency. When someone basically speaks about religion or says they're going to focus on studying religion, that you imagine that somehow they've become more holy than you. That, I don't know, that some kind of Holy Spirit comes in and dwells and changes their heart and makes them a different person, which is a Christian belief, by the way. Although that belief is for all Christians. They think all Christians, it happens to all Christians, that thing, not just the priesthood, not just the clergy. And you look at the alims and people who say they're alims as, oh, they're holy people. But I'll give you a counter argument from the Quran. Who is more knowledgeable about the history of revelation, about God, about angels than Iblis? Who was more knowledgeable than him, other than God? Right? Yet that did not stop him from having pride. Right? He had pride and didn't want to follow God's commands when he thought that he was better than human beings. He didn't want to bow down to human beings as God commanded him to, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew he had pride in his heart, that he had pride for that. Oh, I'm in a great position, I'm beloved by God, I'm almost equal to the angels, because he was very pious, he was very religious amongst the jinn, right? But that didn't stop him from having a little bit of kufr in his heart, kufr nimma, ingratitude of some kind, yeah? So knowledge doesn't mean nothing, because you can give knowledge to somebody, but you can't change their heart, their qalb, right? You can't change it. They have to change it if they can. So no, that doesn't work. Pride is condemned for people, yet God demands worship. They say if pride is a bad moral, then why does God always boast about, in the Quran at least, is he boasting about what he can do? And is not really bad? Is it not? Is that like, why does he forbid it for us, but not for himself? Well, think about it. I'm going to ask you this question: why is pride? Why do you think it's wrong? Not just because Allah says it's wrong, but why do you think it's wrong? Or why do you think it's ridiculous or absurd for a finite creature, you, from having pride? Anyone? You?
I mean, we're all born weak and in need of something stronger to help us, and to have pride means to look down upon others in humanity, and that's like a problem, because you're weak yourself. You can't even help yourself, so why be proud against somebody else? And you're all born equal. But when we talk about pride for God, it's because pride for God is not something bad. It's actually because he can benefit you. He's very powerful.
Okay. Just to pause you there. How are we born equal? Because humans seem to have different intellects, immune systems, different sizes and shapes, and so on and so forth, different strengths. There are people who are stronger and more intelligent than other people. Do you not think that maybe in that case it's okay for those who are stronger and intelligent to look down upon someone who is weaker physically and weaker intellectually?
They'll use it in a bad way.
Sorry? But why would that still be wrong?
Because they'll
I think it should still be wrong because if you know you're stronger than everyone else, you know whoever is not as strong as you are did not have a choice to choose whether or not they're strong. So it's not their fault, so you cannot judge or like feel like you're more important than whoever is important.
Is it just the person that you are being prideful against that has no choice on being strong?
It's like, we are all born into this world the way we are, and the only thing that that brings us, that makes us all equal in a sense is our ability to reason, maybe, or like, so this is like the only thing that sets us apart.
Well, not everyone is reasonable,
Yeah.
or even has the exact same ability to reason, because different intellects means that you can reason usually faster than someone else.
But it's your strength is that you do not give yourself these characteristics that make you better than others. These are ni'mah. These are not of your own doing.
He's answered it. In essence, if you're prideful about anything you have, you're basically saying that you were the origin of it. That you created yourself, that you gave yourself these attributes, and in a way, this is a shirk. This is shirk. Right? Remember, everything is connected to Tawheed, and any deviation is a type of shirk to some extent, right? Different levels. You have a burning
This belief
point.
should come after after believing in one God. This is because we are created by God. So we need Him, and He doesn't need us. And the Creator, I'm saying that this will come after believing in God. Because if we believe that God created us, we should also be proud.
Well, no, I would say that no one has a right to be proud, even if they didn't believe in God's existence, because no one has the ability to give themselves their abilities and attributes to guarantee success for themselves in any plans they make. So that's why it's fundamentally wrong. The only one that has complete and absolute choice and has the power and has basically can do whatever he wants and is the source of all things is basically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not immoral, quote unquote, even if you can't really apply morals to God anyway, but I'm just saying it wouldn't be immoral for God to be prideful, because that's just him being prideful is him being truthful about what he can do. Right? It's not because he literally is superior to us because he's infinite. So that would be the case. But now I just kind of went through some counter arguments, just because these are the usual obstacles you hear. But let's actually go with how do we know God exists, and then we'll kind of end this session for a break. So, actually, let me just before I actually cover some of this stuff here, I'm going to just start with how do you know God existence, and then we go discuss some counter arguments afterwards in the next session. So, how do we know God exists? I'll say there's an argument from causality or change. My apologies, you have to keep remind me about this. Yep, that's it. Okay, very simple. If we had an infinite past, if there was always the universe always existed, and it's always been changing, and it's always been changing, it's always been moving, it's always been existing, there's a very glaring question, which is, how did we get to this point in time? How do we get to where we are now? You might think, well, explain that to me. Well, basically, if I said to you, I mean, we were a little delayed starting due to technical issues and what have you, but if someone told you that this course will start, or this workshop will start after an infinite amount of time, so just be patient, and it will start. You say, wait, if it's going to be an infinite amount of time, will it ever start? And if I said that this workshop, riveting as it might be, will end in an infinite amount of time, will it ever end? Because you can't exhaust infinity, right? You can't reach infinity. And even in some physics equations, or maths models rather, whenever an infinity is predicted, it means it's impossible, because you can't reach it. So we wouldn't, if we had an infinite past, if there was an infinite amount of things before us, let's say, getting to this point, we'd never reach this point. That's how you know there was a start point. That's why you know for certain there's a start point, because there's no other way around it. You can't say, well, infinity exists. And of course, again, have you noticed how the word infinity or غير محدود is always brought in by the atheist. You always say, for people who don't believe in infinite, you bring the word in a lot, right? The question, the problem is that what you call infinite, what you call غير محدود, is really just محدود. Remember, all we're doing today is separating محدود and غير محدود. That's all we're doing. The other one, argument from dependency. I usually, when I go into university in the UK or what have you, I usually try to ask them to bring me a rock. They get worried in case I'm going to throw it at somebody who asks me a question I don't like. I might. But I ask them, because I don't want to bring a man-made object, like this weird pen. I don't want to bring a man-made object because they'll say, oh, we know this was made by a man because it's a man-made object. But even then, I put the challenge to people. I say, okay, if there's an atheist in the audience, I say, how do you know this man-made object was created? They say, oh, because I've seen pens being made in factories. They say, yeah, okay, that's good. You've seen pens being made in factories, but have you seen this pen being made? Did you see this pen being made specifically? Maybe this is the eternal pen that just fell down to earth. Humans discovered it and said, let's make copies of it, right? Because it's a really great design, whatever it is. All right. I mean, I haven't seen a type of pen like this before, so I could believe it maybe. But then they argue, well, then they get stuck, right? One atheist tried to be consistent and say, well, I don't know, maybe it is an eternal pen. Saying, okay, well, I appreciate he was consistent, but it became absurd at the point. Because if I said to you that this pen had no beginning, right, look at it carefully. If I said this pen had no beginning, what would be the first question to come to your head? What's wrong with that?
It's finite, it's limited.
Yeah.
Size and shape.
So?
How they get here?
What? Okay, you're almost there. Yeah, okay, it's finite, but so what? Sorry? Sorry?
The ink will run dry.
The ink will run. Maybe it never had any ink to begin with, but. Sorry? Who did it? But why does it need to be done? Why does it be created by? Why does it need to? Why does it require khalq?
I can break it.
Sorry?
I can completely destroy it.
Yeah.
Then it wouldn't be
You can just, I suppose you could. Well, you haven't destroyed it yet. Maybe you try and you realize, oh, I can't break it. Like, how do you know this before you've done anything?
I can't stop its existence.
Okay, but maybe it just existed beforehand for eternity, and you just ended it. Sorry? It's really obvious. You're going to kick yourself when I tell you. Sorry?
How does it exist?
How does it exist? Well, if it's the eternal pen, why is it not self-subsisting?
Everything that's finite must have a beginning. Because
Why? That's a claim.
Sufficient.
Sorry?
An innovation is not self-sufficient, so it must have a beginning.
Okay, I'll put you in misery. Firstly, the reason why destroying it refutes it being eternal is because if it wasn't created, therefore it would have to be self-sufficient, right? If it's self-sufficient, meaning that its existence depends only on itself, you couldn't affect it. You couldn't do anything to it because its existence comes from itself, not from an external reality that doesn't depend on the air pressure to be just right to stop it from being crushed, let's say, right? Also, I think you hinted on it, which is the first question that would come to your head if you said this is an eternal, or let's say you meet some polytheist guy, he says, come to my cave, I'll show you a god I worship, and that's always been around forever, and show you some god, and the god looks like a monkey or what have you, right? And the first question, I don't know if it makes it more obvious for you, the first question would be, you're saying this god was uncreated, has always looked that way, why a monkey? Or why this size? Or why this shape? Why not? If this pen was not created, why did its size only go up to this much? Why not half or double or a different color maybe? These attributes are fixed. So at what point were they fixed that way? Because there's other possibilities, right? You understand? It could have been any other way. So then what fixed it in that particular way? If it was not created. And hence, if it's self-subsistent, of course, it could choose to be anything else. It could be anything, right? Or literally, it would have no limitations to it. if its limitations or its existence depends on what's inside it, let's just say, this wouldn't be its limitations, right? The fact that it's limited and it didn't create itself leaves only on the one possibility, which is it was created by something outside it. That's how you know rationally it's created. That's why a geologist doesn't have to take a rock and think, oh, maybe this is an eternal rock. No, the geologist knows that this rock, I know for certain is created. I now need to find out how it was created. You know, kayfiyya, as they say, how. I want to find out how. That's what science is all about, because it's already assumed that mahdud things are created. Yeah. So we just ask atheist scientists, because scientists and atheists are not necessarily the same thing, by the way. So atheist scientists, just to be consistent, take the whole universe and say, well, what created that? Right? What created this? And then, of course, the argument would be, well, maybe it was another universe. You know, like maybe, in the Big Bang, but they said maybe there was a previous universe that crunched itself and then it exploded again. Or they say there's some kind of quantum fluctuations that spawn universes and so on and so forth. So we are the result of a change in quantum. I'm trying to give you an analogy here for those people who don't know quantum mechanics. It's much like the idea of water, let's say waters, but in an energy form. And these waters are always jostling about, and that in one particular unstable area, it was at the right conditions, and it just created a universe. Let's say, right? That's the argument of vacuum energy, and so I'm not going to go into quantum mechanics. Reason why is because you don't need to know science to prove these things or to make arguments. The problem is this: is that if you say that before this universe was another universe, or was a quantum fluctuation, what came before that? Or what was before that in precedence, like what in sequence? Yeah, what was before that? And they say, oh, something else. Okay, what was before that? Something else. What was before that? Something else. And if they say it goes from infinity, then the same argument I brought in my first point, which is we'd never get to this point then, if there had to be an infinite amount of things before us. Basically, you can't be an atheist and avoid contradiction. You just can't.
You have to be logical.
Sorry?
You have to be logical.
Well, there's no other explanation. There's quite literally no other explanation that avoids a contradiction. Right?
Can we say for the fact that to prove that it is finite, because it is the fact that it is observable and comprehensible by us. So the fact that it is comprehensible by our senses, therefore it is limited. And our senses...
No one's debating that the observable universe is limited and finite. No one's debating that this pen is finite and limited. Now, someone might say, of course, well, how do you know the non-observable universe is not infinite? And I say, but if it was not infinite, if it was infinite, firstly, it couldn't have many parts, because if one thing is infinite and it has many parts, one part would be infinite as well. Then be multiple infinities, which would then limit each other, right? And then they wouldn't be infinite. And they say, oh, but then maybe there's a reality outside of this one that's infinite, it doesn't have parts, and that's the cause of this universe. And I say, yeah, I agree with you. Congratulations, you believe in God now. That's it. Because one thing, what people will say is they say, oh, you don't know how big the universe is. You don't know that the Big Bang was the actual start point. And I say, I never said I did. Right? This argument makes no assumptions about how big the universe is. It makes no assumptions about when the start point was. Maybe there was 5 universes before this that exploded and crunched and exploded and crunched. And this is number 5. We got to this point this way. Maybe. Doesn't disprove my point, but there was a beginning. I don't know how many, or how big the universe is, or how big quantum fluctuations are, or where they originated from. Or I'm not saying I have knowledge of this. I say the scientists can deal with this. It's for science to count those pebbles in the fish bowl. Let the scientists count those pebbles. Got no problem. I'm not going to assume how many pebbles there are, how many little stones. All I'm saying is that ultimately there was a cause for everything, and there's no other way to avoid contradiction unless you posit that there was an infinite creator, a creator who is غير محدود, and started things from nothing, or started things without any cause in itself. It's not part of a cause. And my last point I'll end with, because then the next argument is. So you had a question?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Before I ask my question, I want maybe like English.
Okay, you take it,
Okay. I just want to make sure about something before I ask my question. When you were talking about that, the atheist taking you to the cave and showing you his God, right?
No, not a mushrik.
Yeah. But the point is, you told us to ask him, why is he this? Why isn't he tolerable? What if he asked you, why not? What would you answer?
Well, a good counter. So why if you were taken to an idol, let's say a statue, and looked like a monkey, and you say, why is it not bigger or different species? And they say, well, why not? Why can't it be a monkey? And I say, okay, I'm not saying it can't be a monkey. I'm saying that what determined it was a monkey and not something else? What chose it to be looking like a monkey and not looking like a human? That's my point. Right? The point that it can't be anything else, which means that if it is the source of its own existence, then surely it could be anything, right?
So if I want to say it in other words, I have to say, what is the force that makes it look like another thing?
Yeah, why? When I say why monkey, why not human? The argument was really, if it can't change that about itself, let's just say, then what decided it would be a monkey for eternity? It had no start point. There would be no explanation for why it was this particular size and not half the size or what have you. The very fact, whenever you see any object or anything you see, and you see a certain size, a certain shape and color, science is about discovering what forces led to choosing that color and choosing that, even if it's not by choice but by mechanical processes, but still, what led to it having this size and this shape and so on and so on. This is basic tafkir, or afkar, basic thought. And I'll finish off with this session with the last point, which is, they might concede, they might say, okay, maybe there's an infinite, eternal thing that's unlimited, an infinite thing that's unlimited and has no parts. Maybe I agree. How do you know it has intelligence? Yeah? How do you know it has intelligence, right? It has a will, an irada. How do you know it has irada? Right? Well, very simple. Sorry?
It took a decision to start this whole thing.
Okay, well, yeah, you jumped the gun. Yeah. It took, what made it create universes? What made it create universes? Because if it's the first start point to everything, if it's the first beginning to everything, what makes it then make universes? If you say, maybe there's an internal mechanism like a clock inside that, yeah? Like a clock has an internal mechanism inside it, then I'll see if there's a clock anywhere here. Oh no, there isn't. But imagine, so there's a clock has an internal mechanism. Okay, what's making the mechanism inside the clock move? Then the argument would be maybe a smaller clock. Okay, and then what's making that move? Or even smaller clock, and an even smaller clock. The problem is, if they go on for an infinity amount of clocks, what you're saying is that before the hand of the clock can move, you have to wait for an infinite amount of other clocks, smaller clocks, to get to that point, and you would never get to it. Again, the only conclusion that avoids contradiction is that whatever this infinite thing is, it chose or decided to initiate making universes, or make universes or a universe, however, Allahu Alam, but decided to make it out of choice. And if something has choice, that's the definition of irada. So I'll leave it like that. One final counter argument that was brought up beforehand, which is, well, if everything was made, then what made God? Yeah, if everything is made, what made God? And I say, no. I didn't say everything was created. I said everything that is mahdud was created. Because if this is mahdud, it has a size, shape, and a color. Right? I could bring a rock occurring naturally and do the same thing. The thing is that you need an explanation for why it has these had, boundaries for its existence. But if something has no had, has no boundaries that define its shape and size and so on, where does it need to be created from? What limits does it need to be created when it has no limits? Right. Then its existence is, I suppose you'd call it, wajib al-wujud, right? Yeah, necessary. So, anyway, I'll pause it there. We'll take a break, and in the next session we'll cover the Is God Evil, but we'll discuss just a few so-called quote-unquote scientific arguments, and also some observations of the universe that are actually quite interesting, which atheists maybe will have trouble with. Anyway, okay, Bismillah. Let's go back a bit to something else, which is a brief look at science. So basically, what you encounter in some debates with atheists, or you see atheists online, is they try to, some atheists try to use science. Now, many people discuss science and they don't define what science is, which makes it more confusing, because science then becomes this almost intelligent force that has a name and walks around and makes judgments, makes ahkam and decisions, and everyone has, science says this and science says that, and no one really knows. If you haven't defined it, they make mistakes and they get really confused over what science is. So to give you a real kind of very simple definition is, science is just the observation of the material world or the tangible world. That's it. Simple. Nothing more than that. But because we use our five senses, and what scientists tend to do now, since obviously we can see things with our five senses, that's one thing, but we want to see beyond our five senses, and so but our eyes are weak and our ears are weak, so we need to use more advanced microphones, advanced telescopes and microscopes. Really what we're doing is we're kind of almost making our eyes stronger, our ears stronger, our nose stronger, and our tongue, because these things detect chemicals, by the way. So your chemical detectors are basically your nose and your tongue. We're basically improving our attributes with technology to allow us to see further and see smaller and hear better. So don't get confused by the technology, but really all you're doing is observing the natural world. And mathematics is used as a way of just modeling what's happening. So basically, usually in a court, right? If a court says that someone had a car accident and we want to reenact that with a model to see what happened. So you might get these little toy cars, and a lawyer will show you, well, one car was going down the road like this and it hit the other car from this angle. So what you're doing is you're modeling something that's happening, right? Because you can't do a full life reconstruction, though sometimes the court might demand a full reconstruction of the event. But basically model. So mathematics is just an attempt to model the relationship between things due to quantities, right? So if I basically was to, let's say, so if I add two quantities of hydrogen or to oxygen, to 1 part oxygen, I'll get basically water, right? It's just modeling relationships between things and quantities. Mathematics doesn't really give you special knowledge, it just allows you to be consistent with what you know. What I mean by that is that, let's say I have a safe, where you can lock things away, right? Open and close your safe. And I put 2 apples in the safe. And then I go away and I come back and I put 2 more. I don't look in the safe, but I put 2 more apples in the safe. I don't look inside it, I close the safe. And let's say I know for certain that no one else has gone into that safe. I then write a model saying 2 apples plus 2 apples predicts that there should be 4 apples in the safe, right? But maybe while I was away, someone actually came into that room where I have the safe and stole one of the, broke into the safe and stole one of the apples. Let's just say, right? They really, really wanted apples, so they broke into a safe to get it. Okay? And then when I actually look into it, I see 3 apples, and my mathematical model is wrong. Not that 2 plus 2 equals 4 is wrong, no, but it doesn't match reality, right? that is basically an analogy for exactly what happens in physics with mathematical models. Some models just don't work. Some models work sometimes in some areas and don't work in other areas. Yeah. So Isaac Newton did laws of motion, which work pretty much on with cars and with baseballs and what have you. You can predict with rockets. It's very good. But if the rocket goes really, really, really fast, close to the speed of light, let's just say, or you look at subatomic particles and how they move, which is pretty much close to the speed of light, if not actual speed of light when it comes to photons and others, it doesn't work so well. Newton's calculations of mechanics, his laws of mechanics, don't fit the physical world. Actually, it doesn't fit it 100%. It just predicts the big stuff, like what happens at a big scale. So in theory, Newton's model is actually wrong. Right? It's not controversial. Any scientist will tell you this. Go to your local physicist and say, is Newton's models of motion an exact understanding of the universe? Say, no. But we use it for the big stuff because what else are we going to use? Yeah, like relativity, and it's not useful. It's not easy to use for car speeds and rocket speeds and things like that, unless it's really going really fast. Yeah. So that's what mathematics is. It's just a way of modeling stuff. Don't get confused by it. Then someone might say, and some atheists who again just don't understand mathematics, because many people actually don't understand it. They say, oh, but you say that you want to separate infinite and finite away from each other, yeah? But in mathematics you have infinities. You have infinities in maths. And you know what? That's wrong. You don't have infinities in maths at all. So show me where you've counted out infinity. No. Do you know why? Because mathematics, or the decimal system, the system that you use, you count 9 digits, and then you basically get to 10. You put a 0 and you add the 1 to the left of it, or to the right of it, right? This is basically the decimal system. It's a counting rule. There is no infinite numbers. People say, but there's infinite numbers. So no, there's only 10 numbers, 10 figures, really. Unless you want to go with the sexagesimal system, which is what the Babylonians developed, where it's to 60. They go to 60, and then you just you add 1 digit, and then you continue counting. That's where we get our minutes and our degrees from, by the way, because as you know, the Middle East was the inventors of mathematics, and of course astronomy, geometry, and so on, and of course letters, right? So there you go. And then those mutakhallif Greeks who were like mutakhallif at the time borrowed that knowledge from Middle Eastern guys and then just took it forward. But before that, they were like backward, like just a bunch of barbarians not going to do much with their lives. Anyway, I digress. So when someone says to you, "There's infinite numbers," say, "Well, show me where these infinite numbers exist somewhere." Yeah, they don't exist somewhere. It's just that the number system can count any number you can think of, or any number a processor can process. How much memory, how much RAM it can go up to. But it's limited by what you can count and how you can count. It's limited. So no computer processor in the world can count up to infinity. And certainly no brain can do it. But whatever number you can think of, or whatever number you have memory in your processor, your computer to do that, it can go up to that amount. That's all it does. That's all it is. So don't get confused when people bring that argument, because there is no infinity. In fact, something really funny in physics, whenever their equations predict an infinity will happen, they know it's impossible, and they have to kind of, you could say, change the equation because they know that their model is not working, and it's called renormalization. Right? So there was I'm not going to go too much into it, but there was basically is there like a juice carton I can borrow? Just anyone? Okay. So this was called the ultraviolet catastrophe. It was basically, they had a model whereby they had a object that was hollow. It had a little slit inside it, and it was perfectly black, so it could absorb light waves and many types of electromagnetic spectrum. So they calculated that if they shot electromagnetic waves into it, they would change the wavelength and produce ultraviolet. It'll bounce around inside, and it will produce ultraviolet radiation that will come out in infinite amounts. And if there's infinite amount of radiation being produced, that means destruction of everything that exists, right? So they did the experiment, and we're still here. And what they realized, obviously, they got a finite number. They got radiation being produced, and it wasn't infinite. It was just a finite number, a limited number. And they realized that our equation doesn't work. Right? So they had to renormalize it, to change it until they got a better model later on, a better mathematical equation that could give a more accurate prediction that wasn't infinite. So whenever mathematics tells you that infinity is going to happen, it's impossible. And when you think, but if how does an equation predict infinity if infinity can't be shown in mathematics, right? Well, what it does is, those little charts, I'll just show you what it looks like. So basically, if you have, let's say 0, and let's say to get to 1, and the chart usually looks like this. Yeah, you've seen, right? So as it basically it approaches 1 but never reaches it. So they say to get to 1, you have to have it will require, let's say, an infinite amount. So usually, let's say, for example, if this was the speed of light, let's just say, then say it's c, and you are accelerating your mass to the speed of light, it will require infinite energy to get there, which means it's impossible for mass to get to the speed of light. That's what it means. Right? Not that you can reach the speed of light. Okay. And there's many other such arguments. They say, for example, if I take a half and then I add a quarter, then I add 1/8, and I add what have you, if you go up to infinity, it equals to 1. And I say yes, if you go up to infinity, it will equal to 1. In practice, what you'll get is 0.999999999. So don't let them confuse you with mathematics. Just in case, I'm going to just put that out there just to help you, because I've encountered tons of atheists who use this argument, and I have to give a basic maths lesson in the middle of a debate, which is, I'm a teacher, but when I'm doing a debate, I'm not doing it as a teacher. I'm not here to educate atheists in debates. So, there's that. Then they argue that the history of science is in conflict with religion. They say throughout history, science has been opposed to religion, there's been contradictions, and people put gods in the place of where later on we discovered how things were working. So the moon was being moved by God, and love was a force called Eros, which was then become a Greek god, they called it like that. And there's all these arguments, these things they claim. And this basically is, in some cases it's true with mushrikeen, but not with people who are muwahideen. Because generally speaking, Jews and Christians and Muslims always believe that, God is controlling everything in the universe, but the kayfiyah, the how, we don't know. So we can explore and look at different things. That wasn't controversial. Now, from Islamic civilization, science and religion and deen, there's no problem. But they usually point to Christianity in the West, or Catholic Church, and they say the Catholic Church stopped science being progressing, and again, that's not entirely true, because the first universities in the West and the first scientists in the West were Catholic. Right, it's Catholic Church. Now, I'm not a supporter of the Catholic Church. I'm not here to advocate for them, but I have to be fair and objective. And the idea that the Christianity is against religion first came from Protestants, who were arguing it was the Catholics who were against religion in the 17th century, so 1600s. They were saying that the Catholics were against science, and then the Protestants, later on, 200 years later, some of them became atheists, and instead of it being Catholicism, it was all Christianity, all religion. Right? It's actually false. And just to give you a very funny example of this, to show you where the aqidah of an atheist made them make a scientific mistake. I'll give you an example. And the atheist who made that mistake is Einstein. Right? So it's not just some random scientist. So Einstein wanted to believe the universe had no beginning. Right? So he believed in something called the steady state theory. Okay, you don't need to write this down, but it's just so you know. Okay, so steady state theory. He wanted to believe that everything in the universe has been the exact way it has been forever, for eternity. No change, because if there's change and movement, well, there is movement, but if there's like evolution or development of the universe itself, that means it must have come from somewhere or some point, right? So he didn't like that. So he invented a term called the cosmological constant to explain why gravity doesn't pull everything together and why things don't fly apart, but they remain exactly the way they are. And his idea of the cosmological constant was just a number he invented that would allow the universe not to fly apart and not to crunch. Okay? He invented it. So along came a Belgian Catholic priest. A Catholic priest who was also a scientist called Georges Lemaitre. Right? He's a priest, as a Catholic priest, as well as a scientist, because they're not contradictory. Well, not exactly anyway. And so he looked at some of the mathematics and he produced a model to show that actually the entire universe originated from a single point. So it has been expanding into existence. And when Einstein heard of this, he said, your mathematics is sound, but I hate the conclusion. And he refused to accept it until Hubble, and which was not the Hubble telescope, but the scientist who was called Hubble, Edward Hubble, looked at light waves and redshift. I'm not going to go into detail, but he showed that all the kind of galaxies were kind of accelerating away from us, or most of them were accelerating away from us in all directions. So that he showed that, well, if it's accelerating away from us, then it must have had a common origin point. That means the universe is expanding, basically. And then finally Einstein actually had to accept it. And the word Big Bang was actually what the atheist scientists called that model to make it look silly. What is this idea you're talking about? Some Big Bang, ridiculous. But it ended up being now the accepted theory. Right? The atheists didn't like it, and the Christian priest got it right. Right? And that's where the atheists refused to believe something because it went against their aqidah. So look, it's not Christianity getting in the way or Islam getting in the way of scientific development. It's your aqidah that's getting in the way of scientific development. Of course, they'll say, well, we accepted it after we saw the physical evidence and so on. So yeah, but when has anyone rejected the physical evidence of stuff? Everyone believes the world is round. Oh, by the way, the Greeks discovered the world was round. So and the Christians believe the world was round. It's a myth. And Galileo wasn't actually burned at the stake for believing that that the sun was the center of the solar system, or the universe rather. He wasn't burnt at all. Even he was actually even, you could say, partly commissioned by the Pope to write something on the idea of the heliocentric and the geocentric model, the Earth-centric and the sun-centric model. But the problem was that he was a bit cheeky, and he wrote a book about it, and he had like a debate between two people, and the person that was the idiot, he basically he quoted the Pope through the mouth of the idiot. So the idiot was like, so basically he said that the Pope was an idiot, and the Pope didn't like that very well. So he got confined to house arrest. House arrest, no burning, no execution, just stay at home. Basically, that's it. That's what happened to him. Only because he got a bit rude, you could say, a bit cheeky, as we say in England. Yeah. So that's a problem. That's a problem. The problem is that most people think and accept what the Hollywood narrative of history of science and religion is. But the idea that science and religion contradict only arose in the 19th century from atheists making public books about this stuff, saying that, oh, this has always happened throughout history, religion versus science, but that wasn't actually the case. And I think there was a final point I was going to mention about this before moving on, which is, oh yes. So I was speaking to the brother, and the brother said to me that the arguments you presented, is that not like philosophy, and haven't these atheists who embrace empiricism or science, let's say physical science, would say that we don't care about philosophy, we want to see facts, we want to see what we can observe, right? Well, firstly, science is based on philosophy or based on principles of non-contradiction. So if you see a contradiction in your observations, you don't say, oh, the universe is contradictory. No, you say, oh, my theory's wrong. Right? So they're based on that. No one accepts contradiction. But also, people say, oh, haven't people used their minds in the past and made mistakes, whereas science doesn't make, or at least physical observation doesn't make mistakes? We'll say, no, in the past, people didn't use their minds and made mistakes. No, they made assumptions and they made mistakes. And even Einstein made assumptions and made mistakes, right? So basically, the Greeks thought that they saw the planets, and they saw the planets seem to be, orbiting the Earth, or going around the Earth. So they said, okay, if something goes around something, then the perfect shape for that is a circle. It's the perfect shape. Okay? That's an assumption. Where'd you get that from? That's an assumption. But then when they saw the planets in the wrong positions, not predicted by their mathematical model, they didn't know how to answer that. Until you have Johann Kepler comes along, and building on the Islamic scholar al-Tusi's mathematics, he predicted that basically, or he hypothesized that the planets orbit in an elliptical orbit. Like an egg is not really an elliptical, but a not circle. Yeah, it goes round, but it's not circle. Right. So he predicted that, and even his model was wrong because he put the sun at the middle of the orbit, when actually it's actually because of the way gravity works, it's actually a point. It's the center point is not exactly the sun because of the pull of all the planets. It's a bit complicated, but basically, anyway, it's not human philosophy has failed, or that the universe has contradictions in it. No, people make assumptions, and then it gets proven wrong. With this case, whenever anyone has ever proved that something will cause a contradiction, and that's the only possible explanation, that's never been proven wrong. Right? 2 + 2 will never equal 5. Ever. Right? As long as what you're describing represents the equation, by the way. Yeah? And likewise, with the issue of avoiding infinite regress, or the infinite past, the only conclusion is the start point. Because anything else just causes infinity, which has been empirically proven or scientifically proven not to exist, where you have infinite regress, or that causes the contradiction of finite and infinite, can't mix. Finite infinite has been empirically proven not to mix. If you want to use that argument, you don't have to. I don't care about just because they haven't found it, but rather, no one could say we've proven that you can have infinity and finite, غير محدود and محدود together. No one's ever proven that. And it wouldn't make sense to cause a contradiction anyway. And when people say, well, why can't we see God in the universe? And that's part of the problem, is that if you see God in the universe, that wouldn't be God. Right? If an atheist was to see a light coming from the sky, and it was coming, and something coming down in a golden chariot, or what have you, the atheist would assume either I've been smoking too much of that stuff that they grow in the Beeka Valley, or aliens. Or I'm having a fever, right? Well, and interesting, the Quran talks about disbelievers in one verse where it says that if they were to be shown the signs, they'll just say, our senses are deluding us, right? So they'll always find a way. And when Newton produced his law of motion to explain that how the universe works like in a mechanical way, everyone's saying, oh look, or not everyone, but atheists were saying, look, the universe can be explained like a watch, like a clock. Therefore, we don't need God. But now, where the issue of the indeterminacy principle of the decay of atom, radioactive, the decay of atom, they can't predict when a single atom will decay. It seems almost to be random, they say. Or they say, oh look, the universe is unpredictable. Therefore, no God. So it's predictable, no God. Unpredictable, no God. And then the issue, they say, they use the idea of energy cannot be created or destroyed, which was just a kind of not a law that they based on what was observed, but really they just said that in a closed system, energy doesn't suddenly disappear or reappear or appear out of nothing, right? So energy is neither created nor destroyed. Therefore, the universe was not created. Therefore, no God. even though it doesn't really apply to the universe. You know, the universe is a different scale of things. We're talking about closed systems, not the universe. And then when they discovered virtual particles, or they hypothesized virtual particles that pop in and out of existence very briefly. Oh look, something can come from nothing and go into nothing, therefore no God. So whatever you show them in science, there's no God. I mean, like, and if you say to them, well, how do you know these virtual particles are not actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creating there and then these particles? Well, you don't know that. You don't know where these particles come from. So yeah, and you don't know where those particles come from either. So why are you speculating on this? Well, it's okay for you to speculate, have done. But I have to, my belief is wrong now. Just because I say that Allah is the creator of all things, when rationally I can deduce that's the only possibility, ultimately. I don't know where virtual particles do come from. Maybe they come from another universe, another dimension, what have you. I'm not saying I know where they come from. I'm merely saying that you can't point to that and say, oh, this proves God's existence. Because for the ancient Greeks, their version of virtual particles was a comet suddenly just coming out of the space. You didn't see it before. It just came out of space and like shot past them. That was their virtual particles. But they never said, oh, I guess no gods exist. Right? So nothing. There's a tract in the Old Testament or the Jewish book which is nothing new under the sun. Right? There's nothing new under the sun. Humans, there were atheists back in ancient Greece who, the atomists and Democritus and Leucippus, who argued that everything is made of of small things that can't be cut, atomos, things that meaning not cuttable. And there was void. And then they said, okay, so if you don't believe there's any God, how do you explain... Because they said the universe is just filled with atoms. And they say, well, how do you explain then that the universe has a finite amount of atoms? And they say, oh, okay, then there's an infinite amount of atoms. Not a particular number. Because if you say only 100 billion atoms, then people say, why 100 billion? Why not 200 billion or 50 billion, right? And so they said infinite atoms. And then people said, well, there's infinite atoms, then why is not everything just filled with atoms then? And then they said, oh, that's because there's multiple universes where these infinite atoms are spread out amongst. Yeah, they invented the idea of multiple universes, the atomists. And you might think, oh, but they called it atoms. I mean, weren't they predicting didn't they get it right, the idea of atoms? We'll say no, because what we thought was not cuttable, what we thought was indivisible, when we discovered atoms, real atoms, we called that using the Greek word atoms. But atoms means you can't divide it. So, but you can divide atoms, right? So they're not really atoms, according to Greeks. But anyway, what I want to just say is that you don't need science in this whole discussion. The only reason I'm telling you this stuff is so that you know enough to tell the atheist that you don't need science in this discussion. Science, you wouldn't accept anything that science shows you anyway. So, and you make speculations anyway, and you follow them anyway. So, don't bring science into it. It's not your friend. Yeah, just because you say, "Oh, I'm an atheist, I follow science." No, science was invented by theists. And atheists have got it wrong because of their Aqidah. Many theories, they got it wrong because of their Aqidah. Their bias. So don't bring science into this. Just like Einstein, keep your Aqidah out of science and let it for the scientists. And I've said this in the slide, which we'll make a copy of. This is the... I just kind of... Sorry. Yeah, okay. Let's just go forward. So you'll have access to these copies of the kind of the slides. And I think lastly, there is one issue that needs explaining, which is, and again, this is where atheists bring their multiverse theory. Again, always infinite, but not something that has a will or irada, right? The universe, when it started, I think you mentioned this very briefly in your own way. When the universe began, if it accelerated a tiny fraction too quickly, there wouldn't be enough time to form stars and planets, right? It would just maybe atoms, and that's it. It would just spread out, and it would expand, and it would become nothing. There'll be no galaxies, no solar systems, no stars, nothing. But if expanded just a tiny fraction too slowly, gravity would have pulled everything back into itself, and it would have gone into a singularity, as in a black hole. It would have formed a black hole. It would crunch back in. But because it was at a very precise amount, and you might think, what amount? Like, what? Give me a number. Well, it's in Planck units, but basically it's a number. Imagine a number of 0.0000. Add 122 zeros to that. 1. That's the precise amount it had to be. If you added one more 0.00122 zeros, just one more, one tiny little increment more, the universe would have been too fast, and one tiny increment less, it would have been too slow, and it would have crunched together. So then the question that physicists kind of debate is, how is it that our universe is so precisely tuned that stars and systems can form, and ultimately life can then form? And that's when the atheists bring in and say, oh, the multiverse. There's every single possibility has been tried in every single universe, and we're just in the lucky universe, which was at that right amount whereby solar systems can form and galaxies can form and what have you. So we're in that lucky universe. And they'll try to counter-argue to you and say, we're only in the lucky universe because we're in the universe that could make life, and therefore realizing that life could become you, and then you could realize you're in the lucky universe, right? That's what they say, the argument. But it doesn't answer, firstly, they might say that you roll a dice an infinite amount of times and you'll get like 100 sixes in one roll, let's say. The rebuttal to that is very simple. One, who's rolling the dice? Yeah, who's making these different universes in the first place? And two, the idea of multiple or infinite universes of every different type. Who determined which universe gets which set of constants in it? Because you haven't explained why each universe has a different set of constants in your little theory of the multiverse. Because remember this pen, right? If there were an infinite amount of pens, like this, but some were like much larger and much smaller and different colours, I mean, all right, that's all great, but you still haven't explained why in all this infinite production, this pen, it was decided that it would be this way and not a different way. Or if you don't get my analogy, it's imagine there's an infinite. I call it the infinite production line. So there's a machine that can make different products. So one moment it makes a car, other moment it makes a computer, other moment it makes a plasma screen TV. Okay, so you say it makes an infinite variety of products to different sizes and what have you, different colors and what have you. That's great, but when it produced a car, a red car, let's say, why did it produce at that moment a red car and not a blue car or a plasma screen TV? You're saying that you rolling that dice infinite times to get the 100 sixes, let's say. That's all great, but you haven't explained why at the time you did roll it and got 100 sixes, why those dice produced that, or why those dice produce any results. You have a...
No, I was just going to say, but we have to say that if you roll the dice that many times to get a certain aspect of the universe, for every aspect, for every creation, you're also rolling the dice an infinite number of times. Not like one roll of the dice, the whole universe. The chances were that we would have gravity, we would have light, the sun, and all that stuff. So you have to keep rolling it infinite amount of times to get each.
Yeah, and my question is, who's rolling it, and what about the roll makes it have the results of those dice at any particular roll? There's always a cause and effect. Atheists can't escape it, no matter how many absurd universes they invent. They can't escape. Cause and effect can't escape origin of things. So the reason why I mention this stuff is you don't need to know. You don't need to study science. Although if you do study science, great. You know, I encourage you to do so. It's fascinating. I love it. I find it very fascinating, interesting. Do so. Heck, we need more scientists in the Muslim world anyway. Right? We also need an economy that can then give them the financial means, investment to do science. But that's a different discussion. But we need more scientists. So please do that. But what I'm saying is that when it comes to debating God, atheists hide behind science because they rely on your ignorance of maths and science. And it's not always out of malice because they're evil. It's just that they also hide behind it because they too, most of them, are also confused about it or are ignorant about the idea. Like, oh, there's infinite numbers. Where do they exist? Sorry. If anyone knows Greek philosophy, Plato believed in an idea called Platonic forms, where each idea actually exists somewhere. So there's an existence of infinite numbers somewhere, according to Plato, but not according to us or scientists or anyone else after Plato. So anyway, you don't need science to prove or disprove God's existence. That's my point. So, and in fact, it actually brings up more questions than it answers, more interesting questions than it answers, such as why is our universe very precisely tuned that would actually allow eventually life to exist with the formation of stars. Okay, now just to kind of... so just check the time now. When's the next break due? Okay. So the other point that was mentioned, let's go to... Okay, so is evolution a problem? That's the other question that's brought up. They say, oh, evolution disproves God's existence. Well, firstly, just off the bat, if you think about it, so no, it wouldn't, because you're just describing a mechanism that occurs in the natural world, a natural world which was created by ultimately the Creator. So that's not doesn't kind of encompass that. There was a kind of a joke. A kind of a joke that was put down where an atheist was arguing with God and said, "Oh, I can use my scientific tools to replicate life. I don't need you to create life like just off the bat. I can do it myself. I'll just get some dirt here." And then God says, "No, get your own dirt. Right? get your own material." Right? So it's a kind of a joke to show that evolution doesn't really challenge the existence of God. So what they'll argue is that it challenges the Islamic perspective of the universe. Now, there is currently in the Muslim world ikhtilaf on the issue of how to address it. But thankfully, I don't care about ikhtilaf in amongst the scholars. I care about ikhtilaf amongst Muslim scientists. And some scientists reckon that there's some very deep systematic problems with the theory that doesn't match what they observe in the natural world. Others say that they believe in a thing. Well, it is a process that explains, animal evolution. So I'm not here to argue or disprove, or prove or disprove the idea of evolution. I'm merely going to point something else out, which is whatever the results of this, it does not touch Islamic doctrines. It does not touch how Islam describes things. So, where did this problem come from? Well, it's because there was a reaction against Darwin's theory in America by American Protestants called the fundamentalists. That they actually call themselves the fundamentalists. That's where the term came from, because they agreed to different madahib agreed to come together and agree on a set of books which they called the fundamentals. Hence, they were called the fundamentalists. So they determined that the universe was only 6,000 years old, let's say. Due to their interpretation of the Bible, not the Catholic interpretation. They're Protestants anyway, but anyway. And they want to take it, they counted the genealogy of people, made a calculation based on the average age of a human being, and then said the earth is only 6,000 years old and what have you, and that's been an issue. After colonialism, Muslims looked towards Christians to imitate, as unfortunately is the current state of the Muslim mindset, is to imitate, not to innovate. And not innovating Aqidah or belief, innovate in technology and science. Right? That's the good innovation. That's the, Bida Hasana, they say, right? So they borrowed the Christian response, or the American Protestant Christian response to evolution, and it just caused us a lot of trouble and confusion and problems and so on and so forth. Because the Protestant Americans interpreted that God made animals by popping them into existence. What does it say in the Quran and Hadith? So, there's no kayfiyah given, no kayf. We don't know how Allah made animals. In fact, there's many verses in the Quran that you could even interpret the other way. Allah diversified animals out, spread them out throughout the earth, and we know that all things that happen in the universe is Allah's will. So, but we don't know how He did it. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran to go forth and look how the camels are created. So you're meant to, if you want to find out how, you look at them. You observe them. It didn't tell us the how. So we went to defend we're like defending a hill against enemy attack that we didn't have to defend in the first place, is my point. Right? It doesn't mean that evolution is right. I'm just saying that we made an assumption and never making assumptions and started to defend that hill on the issue of animal evolution. So you had a question, sister?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, you were saying that animals could have evolved, potentially?
I'm saying that whether they did or didn't, it does not impact or affect the Islamic belief system, because there's no hadith or Quran that talks about how animals came about. If there was...
Right. But if animals evolved, that could potentially mean that humans evolved as well.
Well, and that brings me to my other point, which is the point at the bottom of that, which is, how comes, I mean, we've always observed, from the time of the Prophet Muhammad and before his time, they always saw that humans came from two parents. Humans came from two parents. So when the idea of Isa alayhi salam not having a father, no one says, oh no, this is a problem because we observe that humans come from two parents, and this contradicts Isa alayhi salam's birth, because how can he not have a father? What about, will half his chromosome, will half his genome be missing? Will he not have, he needs to have a Y chromosome. Where's that come from? No one ever had that shubahat from that. They said, well, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do whatever he wants. I mean, if he created the universe from nothing, that's a pretty big miracle by itself. Yeah, but yet he can't make Isa alayhi salam without a father. Now that's a big problem. No one had that shubahat, right? So the current debate on evolution is like that. Is in essence almost a replication of that same debate. Well, there was no debate of that, but no one would argue that it's absurd to say Isa alayhi salam has a father, because we know that humans have to have two parents, one is a father, one is a mother. And likewise, no one said that it causes shubahat because Isa alayhi salam is meant to have no father, but we've now learned through science that everyone has a father and a mother. No, they knew that back then. Right? I'll give you another example, which is, no one ever thinks about this, the clay bird. So Isa alayhi salam makes a clay bird and asks Allah to make it alive. So it becomes a living bird. Okay, what's the genome of that bird? Because you need to have a genome to live, right? It's not just how you're created. A genome manages and regulates how your body works. Each cell knows what to do because it has genome in it, right? It has the genetic genes inside it. So does the bird not have genes because it didn't have any parents? It came from clay, right? No, it's going to have a genome, and it's going to have to be the same genome as the rest of the other birds of the species, even though it didn't have parents. It would have to replicate, it would have to look like the other birds and have the same genes, including all the flaws of the development of evolution, if it's true, as other birds of its species.
That's a claim against evolution.
No, I'm saying that why can't we believe that Adam alayhi salam was an exception to the case, just like that bird out of clay is an exception, just like Isa alayhi salam is an exception from the normal process of reproduction. Why is it that evolution now is going to challenge Adam alayhi salam's creation, when we know of other things that were made through miraculous intervention? Why is that a big deal then? Right? And as I said, I'm not arguing one way or the other, because maybe in the next 10 years or 50 years they'll discover, back then he used to believe in evolution, and now we've refuted it, right? So I'm just saying that it doesn't touch Islamic doctrine. So you have a further...
A question that a lot of atheists might have is if humans did come from two people like Adam and Hawa, then that would kind of entail that there was a lot of incest going on, and therefore mutations would happen, and there's no way that a whole species of humans could flourish if there were so many mutations, especially with the rule of chaos. And do you get what I mean?
Okay, so this
then they go back and they say, well, incest is also against your religion, so where was it prohibited and why was it allowed in the beginning, and all those
okay, do you have a follow-up?
No, I was watching something the other day. There's an island, I can't remember where it
There's
is.
a microphone, give it to them.
No, it's like, no, it's just, like we're saying Allah, you know, He has power to do anything and everything and anytime, anywhere. I was just going to say, they discovered an island. There's a race of primitive people, and they're a limited population, and they have no genetic flaws. They have no problems with inbreeding because that's the way Allah created them. So they don't have that. So it's like, you know, it's really not an issue if we believe in,
Yeah.
you know.
So you make a good point. So the problem with incest is that when you have certain flaws in the genome, which might even be recessive if a child only has one recessive gene, then it's not a problem. But if it has two recessive genes, then it manifests itself, right? So someone might have genetic problems which then become passed on if they marry their sibling, let's just say. But we will see that with the time of Adam alayhi salam and his children, that will be an exception to the rule because of the nature of the genes that might be created with perfect genes, perhaps, or at least genes that don't have those particular problems or issues that later became the point. And humans can still diversify into different skin colors, tones, heights, and so on and so forth due to natural mutation that happens over time. For example, they located the likely origin of the mutation of the blonde hair and blue eyes to somewhere in West Russia today, you could say, as the migrations of the earliest Europeans 14,000 years ago. One of them had a mutation whereby they had no melanin in their eyes and no melanin in their hair, and they just developed blue eyes and basically blonde hair. Well, not in the same person. I mean, blonde hair coming from that root and blue eyes separately, but then they just took on, for example. They hypothesized that people just thought, oh, this is a unique trait, I'll marry this person, whatever, blue eyes, what have you. But what blue eyes just means is that you don't have protection against the sun in your iris. So so you can look at it like that if you want, but it's pretty to look at, perhaps, if you're used to brown eyes. But then again, brown eyes are, if you live in a country full of blue eyes, they found brown eyes to be exotic, so there you go, hey, humans. So my point is that Adam alayhi salam, it's not controversial because the universe was born by a mu'jiza, right? So why not Adam alayhi salam? Why is that a big issue? And lastly, my kind of last point is that you could, again, there's plausible arguments in the Quran to show that, for example, Iblis looked at the model of the clay model, what have you, that was fashioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fashioned by his two hands. Interesting how it wasn't fashioned from instantly from nothing. So Adam alayhi salam wasn't just brought into existence from nothing, right? But the universe was brought from nothing, and eventually then became the animals and the planets and things like that, right? But when describing the creation of Adam alayhi salam, it was fashioned with Allah described it as fashioning it with his two hands, shaping it with his two hands, meaning denoting that possibly he took pre-existing material that already existed and shaped it and changed it. Some people say it's possible that he could be referring to how he evolved different structures on Earth. He created an animal-like creature that looks like us, but is not Adam alayhi salam, not his parentage, but just looks like us, but doesn't have an aql. And Iblis saw the model that was being developed, and he saw, this is going to cause much facade in the earth. Why am I going to bow down to this? Just because you're going to give it an aql? And then he created, once he developed the model, he then could have made man in that pre-existing image, but with an aql, for example. That's not an explanation. I don't advance it. I don't say that's the best interpretation of the Quran. I'm just saying that there are many impossibilities here, and I'm just telling you, don't make assumptions, is my point. Right? Don't make assumptions. Tell the scientists, I'll leave you to discuss evolution, whether it's true or not, and to critique it and prove one second. To critique it, what have you. Maybe it'll be true, maybe it'll be refuted in the future, who knows. But it does not touch the Islamic creed, which is that Adam alayhi salam had no parents. Khalas. Nothing beyond. That's all we need to believe, is that Adam alayhi salam had no parents. That's it. Right? If you want to speculate, and it's going to be only speculation, as to was there other hominids that looked like us, and were there because it's Bani Adam, so were there other types of tribes, other types of different hominids around? Allahu alam. All you need to believe is that Adam alayhi salam had no parents. That's it. So don't make assumptions on top of that, because you'll fall into what happened to the Christians in America, and it made many people leave Christianity thinking there was a contradiction. Did you know that the Catholic Church is silent on the issue of evolution? And it always has been. It's never given a position on it. It says maybe that's how God made things. Maybe not. We'll let scientists discuss that. But sorry.
Neither does Islam, right?
Yeah, but people imagine that science contradicts religion because these very vocal American Protestants came up, and then some Turkish guy who will not be named said, "Hey, that's a great idea," and he made colourful booklets about it, spread it throughout the Muslim world. And if you think that this is something that Muslims have never actually encountered before, or that we've never discovered, and this is the other issue that maybe what could shock you, was that Sultan Abdul Hamid II, the famous caliph, it's not on there, sorry. Sultan Abdul Hamid II, he commissioned the first research into this back in the 19th century into the issue of evolution. And they concluded that it doesn't threaten the Islamic creed. Is that the... Oh, okay. So he concluded that it does not threaten. I'm just trying to find the actual quote for you, if I can find the particular name. It was actually, he got a Syrian guy to write a report on the matter, and even before him, Muslim scholars like Ibn Khaldun was speculating that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the animal kingdom seems to be the case that a mineral, a rock, can become into a plant, and a plant then can become into animal, can change into an animal. So Ibn Khaldun was advancing these kind of theories. And ancient Greeks were advancing the same kind of theories. I think Heraclitus, I believe. But he argued that it was, random, not random mutations, but just random pieces. Like an animal might have two arms, it might have an arm out of its head and four eyes or what have you. And then eventually the attributes that work will survive. So Charles Darwin didn't discover anything. He just invented the idea that of natural selection, whereby the strongest animal survives and reproduces. Not the mechanism of how it works, not the idea of things change over time with animals and plants and things like that. So that's the thing that you're not aware of. And if you want to find out more information about this, just go to my website and just Google on the search engine or put in the search engine evolution. And I have an article where I just show the history of that idea and Muslim responses, Christian responses, ancient Greek discussions of this before Charles Darwin. It's not controversial. Historians will admit that he only just posited a mechanism for it, not invented the idea of that idea. So anyway, but as I said, maybe in 20 years' time they'll discover that evolution was just like steady state theory, was just a bit of a hoax and a big mistake, and there's lots of holes in it. Well, there is holes in it still to this day, but so I'm not saying you should believe it or not. I'm just saying, whatever the conclusion, it doesn't touch our Aqidah. That's all I want to say. So, khair inshallah. Is this now?
We'll take a short break, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Then we'll continue till 8:15. We'll finish a little bit early, because for Maghrib prayers. Okay, because we have to pray from now.
Okay. Khair inshallah. So we'll take a 10-minute break and then we'll just.
2 minutes.
Oh, a 2-minute break.
2 minutes break. Okay.
Okay then. 2-minute break and then we'll continue inshallah. Okay, brothers and sisters, we'll begin the next section now. I spent a bit more on the issue of on science, just because some of the questions I had after the first section kind of showed me that I have to go maybe discuss it a bit more, as well as some of the arguments you told me about, the arguments against God's existence, one of them being evolution. So I went into that bit more detail because that was something that you said was an issue and a problem. But to finish up this section before going to Is God Evil section, I want to kind of bring a point up where people say, why did God make us if he doesn't need us? Right? But we always assume as creatures that because we do things because we need something, or we're motivated to by our fitrah or our emotions and our instincts, which we didn't have a choice to have these instincts, it just moves us, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also does the same for the same reason. Now, as I said, this is an innocent mistake, But what I say is what happens in this case with all misconceptions concerning God is sometimes we even if we don't realize it, we mix the finite and the infinite together. We assume that God is motivated like a finite creature does. And I'd say it's an innocent mistake to make, because even when I first encountered that, I thought, why did God make us? Then I realized it's not making sense. Oh, wait there, I've made an assumption. There's always an assumption behind it. If God was motivated by his emotions or he has a fitrah of his own, then what gave him that fitrah? What gave him that emotions and instincts? Right? Then there must be something greater than him that made him and gave him those things that he can't control. So when God makes something or does something, he doesn't need anything. And what does the Quran say about that? Allah doesn't need anything from you. It doesn't hurt him in the slightest. All of mankind turn away from him. Doesn't hurt him in the absolute slightest. You need him, not all the way around. But then there is a question that is in people's minds. Why did God create in the first place? Anything?
We don't know.
Right? No. Well, the Quran should give us some help here, which is what I'm going to bring up now. Now, basically, you can't know unless Allah tells you what motivates him. With the ghaib, you can't rationalize the ghaib, right? If you can't imagine it, because you're not an infinite creature, you're not ghair ma'dud, you can't imagine stuff. But we know that Allah wasn't doing stuff because he needs it. Okay? So what does the Quran tell us? What guidance can the Quran tell us about this? Maybe will it make sense? Okay. So it says that whatever is in the samawati wal ard, everything it praises him or exalts him. And I was looking at the Arabic word to exalt or to raise up or to magnify, I suppose, to make something bigger. Now, obviously, Allah does not increase his power by creating. You'd think the opposite. If you create something and you lose power, but he doesn't. But I was thinking about this ayah of the Quran. I was thinking about this a lot. And I was looking at scholarship and the tafsir by the mufassirin on this matter. And if you realize something about this, it's really amazing. God, this universe is not eternal. Okay? But God decided to make the universe, to make things that exist, غير محدود, to make things into existence. If God never made anything at all, how is that different from something that can't make anything? Does that make sense? Something that can't make anything. How is that different from something that chooses not to make anything? Right? So something that can't make anything, how is that different from something that doesn't make anything at all? So by the creation of things, this, in a way, it doesn't give him anything. He doesn't get more power from doing it. No, but it expresses his power more than what he was before he created stuff. So he doesn't. I want to be very clear, just in case there's any confusion, because I'm using English language, right? He doesn't gain anything, nothing extra. But what is greater, right? Something that can make and create things, or something that can't create things, which is greater? Sorry?
Something that makes.
Something that can make things, right? Something that can that has the power of khalq. Yeah. So if God never made anything. If never made anything, right? If he chose never to make anything, right? That would be inferior to the potential of him being able to, or of him making something. He doesn't lose it. He doesn't gain or lose anything. But by making something, it just manifests his power. So that everything exists gives praise to God by its own existence. So you existing is an ayat of Allah. Is a proof. It's not a proof, but it shows his power. Now, he's not showing off to anyone. But I'm saying that if he never made anything, that wouldn't be... how would that be different from something that can't make things? So, you and everything in this universe is a manifestation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ability to be the greatest. Yeah? Does that make sense? but he doesn't need it though, right? So this is from the Quran, right? This is not my rationalizations or what have you, but you've probably read this verse before and not thought about that. All the things I'm telling you today, I've plagiarized from the Quran. It all comes from the Quran. It's there. It was there in front of all of us, but we don't reflect upon it. Right? We don't think about things. And when some Muslims think about reflecting on the Quran, they think, I'll read it and maybe I'll open up a dictionary, a lexicon or what have you, and read the definition of terms and that's it. Say, no. The Quran asks you to look, reflect about what you can see around you and read the Quran. Because when you look at all these things, when you read the Quran, which is the ayat of Allah, and you look at the samawat wal-ard, which is also described as the ayat of Allah in the Quran, then you can fully understand what the Quran is saying. That's my point. That's why the Islamic civilization studied the world around it, the natural world, animals, physics, chemistry, because looking at all these things opened up the Quran even more for them. They gained much more understanding of the Quran. But you have to read the other holy book, which is the universe. Yeah, I call it a second holy book because it's ayat of Allah. It's described as the ayat of Allah. In the word ayat being the same. So you need to read those two holy books to understand both better. And that's why our ancestors, they wanted to study the astronomy, physics, chemistry, because I want to see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does things. I want to see how so I can understand Him better. Which metaphorically, they would describe it as getting closer to Allah. Metaphorically, of course, not literally closer to Allah. Right? But that's what we mean when we get closer. You understand Him better. You know how He does things because He told you to look how He does things. Does that make sense? It's a bit of a profound thought, but obtained from the Quran. So, if you've learned anything today, is to go back to the Quran and ponder on it, but also ponder on what everything else that Allah has made, and come to a greater understanding than you did before. So the next one is God evil? Okay. Now Islam posits two main attributes for God: that He has rahmah and He has, adaliyah, right? Justice and mercy. So I'm going to now put this to you. What are the arguments against Allah's justice, and how would you respond to them? And what are the arguments against Allah's mercy, and how would you respond to them? I'll give you 10 minutes to write that down or discuss amongst yourselves by table. Right, we'll have to call it to an end and get your answers. Ready or not? So we'll do it in reverse order. From left to right. So sisters would pass the microphone off to them. Okay, so what did you get for the arguments against justice, and how would you answer them?
Okay, so we got several arguments. Why is there a lot of unfairness in the world? Why are there people?
Why is there a lot of what in the world? Unfairness. Gotcha.
Why are there people who are struggling and others that are not? Why are we created if God already knows that there are people who will not obey Him and eventually go to hell, and others who will and go to heaven? So the answer is, in the end, God created us to test us. So these struggles that we're going through are eventually, they will be poured into our favor in the hereafter. And Allahu a'lam bima la ta'lamun. So we can also testify by that.
So what was your response to why did He make sinners and good people if He knew what they were going to do? Is that the?
We did not respond.
You don't respond to that. Okay, that's an outlying one. All right, good. Why? Yeah, okay, and I think that's kind of related to the previous objection of God's foreknowledge. But all right, you brothers. This time you can't hide behind. Everyone's already covered that. So. Got to,
why those people were born to Muslim parents?
Why is there people born to
Muslim parents?
Muslim parents, okay.
Yes. Why there's eternity in hell?
Okay.
And why there's diseases?
Why is there diseases? Some people.
Especially genetic diseases for kids and newborns.
Okay, so kids. Okay. And sisters in the back.
There's two.
Sorry?
Why there's hudud?
What?
For example,
I thought you were saying like, where's there like the laws of the universe? Because hudud means could be limitations of the universe, but you mean hudud of the the penal system. Okay. Punishments and so on and so forth. So hudud, yeah, okay, it's an interesting question. Why hudud? Is this in the back? Still formulating?
No, just the similar thing with the.
Oh, you can't use their car. That's what they say. Oh, it's really covered.
No, we talked about Rahman first. We didn't get to the last.
Okay.
We're talking about the same as like the idea that some people are guided and some people aren't. And
Sure.
I might say that's not just. It's like fair.
So some people are guided, okay? People are guided. Some people must implement. So I'm just trying to. Okay. And you brothers? That's it? Is that?
There is actually there are HIV. There is HIV.
They said diseases though, so that counts.
Yeah, but he mentioned the diseases which were for newborns and for children. These are sexually transmitted diseases. So, and there is a reason for that, for HIV, and for but we don't know about cancer. We don't know about terrorism, poverty. Did they mention those? Sorry, wasn't that?
I think they said like violence and things like that in the world. I think it was. Okay.
Okay, sorry.
All right, khair, inshallah. Right, so we got a collection of those. Let's see if I predicted any of those responses. Okay, actually, sorry, I didn't. I actually went straight to the responses. Okay, yeah. So evil exists in the world. Pain and suffering. If Allah created the world out of His mercy, why is there no? There's something that no one ever thought of. Actually, this is what some atheists say. If God created the universe of the world out of His mercy, how comes most of the universe is uninhabitable? No one ever thought about that one. Only this planet is habitable, and the universe is very vast. So about millions or trillions, well, more than trillions of planets out there. How come this planet is the only one that's habitable? Of course, that's an assumption, because how do you know if there aren't any? But let's just concede the argument. Mercy is defined as a suspension of Allah's justice, but Allah is just. So does this not contradict His mercy? No one thought about that one. So I outthought you on that. And hell exists and will punish people forever. So they argue, how can God be merciful? Based on that. The next one. Sorry, I'm just going to go to. The arguments against His justice. Evil is committed intentionally in the world between living things and between nature and living things like tsunamis and earthquakes and volcanoes. Of course, diseases would be one of those. Justice is defined as giving people what they deserve, but Allah is merciful. So does this not contradict justice? And why an infinite punishment in hell for a finite sin? I think that wasn't brought up exactly in that way, but I've heard that in England anyway. Infinite punishment for finite sin. So I've kind of anticipated some of what you've said. So I'm going to kind of go back to something that was. Okay. Assumption. Now, bear with me here. Be patient, right? It's a bit like what? But be patient, right? Who said God was good, quote unquote? Okay. Now, do you know what verse of the Quran that I've quoted there?
What do you mean by good?
They're not in the Quran. Huh? Yeah, it's in the Bible. So the Bible says, someone asked Jesus, good teacher, what must I do to earn eternal life? And then he says, why do you call me good? No one is good except God alone, twice. This actually was taken from probably Plato's philosophy, where he believed that the truth behind reality was literally the good, and the creator of the universe couldn't help but be good, and then made the universe out of his desire for goodness. But what this creates in the mind of anyone who looks at the universe is that, well, there's a lot of things that are bad. So if there are bad things and the creative universe makes the universe out of a desire for good, then is this not a contradiction? Right? So you ask me what I mean by good. I'm going to get to that, right? This is exactly the point. What do we mean by good? Yeah. Good and bad is a definition you give to something that has purpose and was created. A car, what's the purpose of a car? Transportation, yeah? Take it from A to B. So if a car doesn't have any wheels and the engine's really bad and doesn't actually do anything, is it a good car or a bad car? It's a bad car, yeah. And of course, if it gets you there really fast and it's a Ferrari or whatever they're driving up and down the Corniche or whatever they call it, I see there, right? It might be a good car. We made an assumption, and I tried to look in the Quran for this, yeah, because I based the belief on the Quran. The Quran nowhere says that God is intrinsically, or He is good, in that there's now a reality of goodness which is higher than God, and God now meets the criteria of a higher morality than Himself. Right? I don't know if you heard this argument. People say, is God good because he's doing certain actions which are good, so then that means that good is higher than God, or is God good because whatever He says is good? Okay, and that's a bit of amongst Christians and atheists, there's a big debate on this issue, because Christians adopted the Platonic philosophy, because Christianity is just basically Judaism meets Greco-Roman culture, and they made a hybrid, it changed itself into a way that the Greeks and Romans would recognize and find familiar, their own culture, their own ideas, and so on. Anyway, that's a different lecture for another day, yeah. But what the Quran describes, it says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just and merciful. So when you use the word good, you're saying God is good, like He's now, that's His essence. What you're saying is that there's something greater than God, goodness, that He fits that, or He's made of that substance or something, right? Which is ridiculous. Because if you're saying that, and the atheists will bring up against Christians all the time, which is, well, if God is good, that means He doesn't have a choice to do bad. That means that He's limited and has a nature. And then what made that nature? Yeah. Whereas the Quran, which is mubin, do you know why it says it's mubin? Because previous peoples, they got confused over words. They introduced words. It made it confusing. You know, Ibn Allah, is that literal? Is it metaphorical? Right? And if you think, well, who would ever call themselves Ibn something? Well, in the Quran, Ibn Sabil. Yeah, it's a traveller, right? Muzaffir is called Ibn Sabil. Does it mean that their father is literally a road? Yeah? No. But when it comes to, the Jews used to say, if you're a holy man or a man who has taqwa, you are a son of God because you are following your God. You're obeying God, right? Like your father, but not literally. Yeah, but that caused a lot of confusion when the Greeks read this stuff and they think, oh, yeah, son of Zeus, son of Jupiter, so must be literal. Yeah, they got confused by that. Yeah, whereas the Quran is mubin, no confusion on these critical issues. Yeah, so never use the term God is good, but say use what the Quran says. Sorry if that's a radical idea for you. Yeah, use what the Quran, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes Himself. You don't use the Bible terms. Remember, Muslims following Christians again, it causes a lot of shubahat for you. Right? If you want to be Christian, be Christian. But if you want to be Muslim, I know it's a radical idea, but look at the Quran, how it describes.
What should we call it?
Sorry? What should we call what? What should we call God? We say He's other, and He is Ar-Rahman. Is that not sufficient?
Yeah, that is sufficient.
Yeah.
If I want to say something else.
No, that's the problem. Don't say something else. Yeah. Okay, so then people say, okay, if justice is what God just tells you to do, or what He says halal and haram, at least for us who are obviously creation, could He then say to you, go out and kill loads of innocent people and babies and what have you, right? Or you should eat the flesh of your own children or something like that. Could he just know why? What's stopping him from commanding that? They argue. The atheists will argue, and they say, well, that's because Allah is adl, and adl has two meanings. One is you give to someone what they deserve. If they have a right over you, right? They have hukuk, right? They have a right over you. You give to them what they deserve. The second meaning is you act in a consistent way. If I treat this brother that one way, I have to treat the brother the exact same way if there's no differences on the matter we're discussing. Yeah? So if you're both hungry and you want food, I should treat you both the same way and give you food. I shouldn't just say I'll give it to you, but I don't like him. He's got blue eyes. I like him instead. Yeah, right. I'm going to discriminate based on eye color. So you can't treat things which are the same differently. So here's the thing: Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a purpose. He gives us a fitrah to fulfill that purpose. So the Sharia, right? The Sharia will not go against your fitrah, because you were made to fulfill the Sharia, and your Sharia was made to fulfill your fitrah. Otherwise, God is contradicting Himself. You understand? That's why the Sharia will never be against the fitrah, and the fitrah will never be against the Sharia. Right? So what we mean by God is just, we mean He doesn't contradict Himself. So if He makes you feel to feel that something is good, like having family and you're treating your father and mother in a respectful way, He will command that not because it is good, but rather He'll command that because you were made to obey Him, and this is part of the things that He intended you to obey Him with. So He'll give you a fitrah that will enjoy that, at least, or will find it natural. You'll find it natural to yourself. But because you're experiencing it, you think you experience it as a pleasure, so you think, oh, it's good. I feel good doing this. So it must be higher ideal called goodness somewhere that God is fulfilling. No, there's nothing higher than God. God just being consistent with you. So, do you understand what I'm saying, right? So that would be the response. I'm going to try and go through some of the contentions because time is limited, and we started a bit more later than I would have wanted.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
When we hear the Prophet saying, Hadith Qudsi, Rahmati sabaqat ghadabi, my mercy has superseded, I think, my anger. Doesn't that give us a notion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala His mercy encompasses pretty much everything, even encompasses the situations where He is angry at a slave for doing something wrong or something like that. And can't we say that He's more Rahman than He is actually just or something like that?
What we say with regards to Allah's Rahmah being, in that description, it's not that He has inside Him different levels of, so He has something called Rahmah and something called Adaliyah, or obviously to punish, and He just has a different amount inside Him. No. He chooses to manifest, to exert a power of His mercy more than He chooses to exert a power of His punishment. That's what it means. It's because there's no internal things inside. It's His irada, and He wills to be more merciful. He wills to be merciful more than just. And there's actually, I don't want to get into like Islamic classical philosophy, but it's really amazing. It's beautiful, in fact. But I don't want to get into it. But some people, and I've mentioned to the brother as well earlier on, that the classical scholars have said that if you think about it, ultimately, all these attributes are one and the same thing. His mercy and Adaliyah, they're actually one and the same thing. And I explained to you why from the Hadith and from the Quran. Why actually, if you think about it, He's actually completely consistent. Right? Very consistent. But I want to get to that just 1 second by showing this. Now, in previous religions or civilizations who had left the original revelation they received, they started to assume that God was intrinsically good, or as in He was following this higher ideal of goodness. But when they had evil, they didn't know how to explain it, and they invented a second God, which is a god of evil, which is the Zoroastrians then developed that idea, and the Mithras cult to some extent, and Manichaeism as well that developed. It developed here. This is the area where all this stuff develops. So subhanAllah, because I get to be in the area now that I read only in books. So they committed shirk because the only way they could explain evil, once they assumed God was good, was to make another God. That must be the reason for evil. And it was not even just these other religions. The Christian group called the Gnostics developed an idea that the God of the Old Testament was a different God to the God of the New Testament, and the Old Testament God was an evil God, and the New Testament God of Jesus was the good God. Because the Old Testament God seems to be full of vengeance and punishing and so on, and Jesus is all like Mr. Nice Guy. So they said, oh, it must be two gods, the Christian Gnostics. Again, they arose from Egypt, but again, some in this area as well. So this is the problem when they assume things about God, you make assumptions. But in Islam, we say the good and bad, what you call good and bad, pain, pleasure, and so on, everything comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So then the question is, why does there exist then evil and suffering and so on and so forth, what you call evil and suffering? So again, you'll have a copy of this slide to use, but unfortunately I couldn't expand it any further. I'll try to see if I can I actually make it bigger. I can't. Okay, I'll kind of just go through the arguments you've mentioned. Okay, first and foremost, if evil didn't exist in the world, or suffering didn't exist in the world, you wouldn't know what mercy was. You wouldn't know what mercy was in the first place. But that is not the ultimate argument. That's just my kind of initial argument I'm going to make. There's actually more interesting arguments. Pain and pleasure, and I was discussing this in my lecture yesterday, pain and pleasure actually serve a higher purpose. If you assume, the problem is you assumed, some of you, under the liberal kind of thinking that has arisen in the West especially, that the purpose of life is to enjoy it and get maximum pleasure. Then, those people who still believed in God and took that Aqidah, then when they looked at the world, they saw there was pain and suffering. And instead of thinking to themselves, oh, maybe this Aqidah is wrong, maybe the Aqidah that the purpose of life is to get enjoyment, is an assumption. No. They said, oh, then if there's pain and suffering, then must mean there's no God. Because if God exists, then his hukum is that you must enjoy life. No, but where did he say that? Where did he say that? If you actually think about it, did you have an entitlement, or do you have a right to exist? Right? Was God obliged? Is it wajib on God to create you? Was it obligatory on him to make you? Right? So then, why do people complain if human lives are short? And when they say short, they also make the other assumption that the default, the standard for human life must be long. They think, oh, this person didn't live up to 80. I mean, everyone knows that God is obliged to make us live until 80 years old. No, he's not. Imagine your parents and you want to take a little kid to the fairground. Let's say you have enough time, or you want to treat the kid, so you take to the fairground and you take the kid on all the different rides, the roller coasters and things like this, and it's all really, and the kid really enjoys it. But say the parent is rushed for time or doesn't want to spoil the kid, so in a different situation, the parents take the kid in for 5 minutes, just say, oh, just look around, it's kind of fun and so on, isn't it? Okay, we have to go. And the kid goes, no, how dare you take me out of here? How dare you? You have to keep me here and I have to go on all these rides. Otherwise, you're being unjust. What would you say? Right? You say that kid deserves a slap for being ungrateful. You see, if God chooses to create you for only 1 second in this life, or for 100 years in this life, in both those situations, he's giving you a present. And if you actually think about it, people who are only, let's say they're born and they die as a still young child and they don't go to become an adult, some of them actually are, you could say they're the lucky ones compared to what would happen to other human beings who were allowed to live a full life. Well, not a full life, they were allowed to live longer. So even I'm using the assumption full life as opposed to, it's a mushkila. right? But yeah, it is a problem we have to solve. Even when we say a full life, we make the assumption that a full life means it's completed, as in that's what you have to have. No, it's actually an assumption. You're not owed anything. And this is actually ingratitude. To say, God, you owe me everything. You owe me 2 cars, a big house, overlooking the Corniche, and a bunch of other things, right? No, He doesn't owe you anything. Okay, but there are, as I said, there are kids who God will just show them a little experience of this world and take those kids back to Himself. That's because their purpose was different from your purpose. So your purpose was to worship God. Their purpose was to worship God, and that rock I talked about earlier is purpose to worship God. Doesn't mean now you're all going to have the same experiences. Your very existence is a worship of God. The very fact that He can create consciousness to experience the world and witness it, that's a worship of God. And to create consciousness to experience the world and have enough life to then make a choice to choose to worship Him is even more of a worship of God. Because the rock can't choose to worship Him, it just is. It just exists, and it is itself a worship of God. But you existing is also worship of God, but you choosing on top of that to choose God over other things, that's a worship of God. But here's the other thing though. In order for you to make a choice, you have to be given 2 options. And to be given 2 options, one of them has to, or they have to clash with each other in your mind. You must know that one is right, and the other one you must desire. And you must pick the one that was right over the one that you desire. And to make you desire something, you have to use pain and pleasure for that. Otherwise, you don't have free will. There's no other way of giving you free will. You need to have a choice. Choice has to be motivated by pain and pleasure. And also, pain also serves another choice, which another purpose. Pain, something that you can't, whatever you do, you can't run away from it, reminds you, like it reminds animals, that you are limited, you are mahdud, and there are some things you can't control, because Allah is in control. So pain itself is a worship of God, as well as pleasure, being rahmah from God, is also a worship of God. So everything worships God. Everything is a worship of God. So it's completely consistent. And so when you see diseases that happen or what have you, well, as the Quran describes, Allah wills for what He wants for different things, as He pleases. But the thing is that He's not unjust, so that the animal that beat its companion, let's say it was a big, let's say, stag, and it was a male stag, and it hit another male stag, and that one had to run away, and then the big stag got all the females for itself. In the hereafter, there will be justice. The stag that hit the other one will get revenge and will be given whatever Allah wants to give that stag, to give him equality to the other stags that got that equality. And likewise, between you, human beings, if you do something bad to somebody, Allah's justice means that He can't forgive what you did to someone else. That person has to forgive it. But His rahmah means that if you actually offend Him, He can choose to forgive it. Now, I'm just going to also make another point, which is, you might think, well, how is it just and this is what Christians will say to you, how is it just for God to forgive you a sin that you did against the Creator of the universe? Yeah. Well, here's what the Hadith and Quran say. I'm going to actually put one on the screen in a second. If you do tawbah, if you ask for forgiveness, if you repent and you know that you were wrong what you were doing, and you intend never to do it again, it was true tawbah. You recognize it was wrong. I will never do that again. I should not have done it. I hate myself for doing that. Then you're not really the same person that did that crime at that time, at the moment you did that crime. So if Allah forgives you, He's not actually punishing someone that did a crime and got away with it, because to punish you if you did true tawbah would be punishing an innocent person. because you're not the same person that did the crime in a metaphorical way. And you think, oh, is this a bit too, is this some mental gymnastics on the matter? Well, no, because, okay, there's a hadith, okay, actually it's not on the hadith on there, but there's a hadith saying that a person who sins and does tawbah is like someone who has no sin. You know that hadith, right? So it's as if you had no itham, right? No sin because you did tawbah, right? So this is from the hadith how it describes things, right? Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala understands, you know why He's 99, He has 99 parts mercy which is reserved for Himself and 1 part mercy in His world. Why His mercy overcomes His wrath is because in order for you to have free will, you have to be under pressure from the world, right? To be gone in different ways. One is to know a right way and then to know a way that you desire more than the right way. It's a lot of pressure. So see how Allah is understanding of this, that He's willing to forgive so easily because He knows how much pressure mankind was under. And just to kind of show this, in fact, He even describes it that when mankind, when mankind was given a choice to accept this test before even being created, and mankind said, yeah, we'll do it, we'll accept imtihan, we'll accept going to having imtihan. He described that mankind was unjust to themselves. That we were unjust to ourselves by accepting it because so many of us will fail it. It'll be a big test. There's a lot at stake there. And so some people could even argue that although it's from a human perspective, it's a great tragedy, but if people might pass away before they get to the point of being tested, or in human history many people have passed away before they get tested, this even might be part of rahmah as He's rescuing many human beings from existing before going into the issue of imtihan and maybe ending up in Jahannam. Because they weren't given the test. Like the rock is not given the test, the angels aren't given tests. But then again, they're not given the same reward either in the hereafter. So Allah is just in that manner. There's limited time. I think we have to pray Maghrib soon before. But I think just to kind of, I've answered most of the arguments which have been put forward that you've raised. Just give me 2 minutes, brother, before I quickly just go through this. I've answered most of it in the slides. The slides will be made available to you so that you can read them up. I've given you the main basis, the main argument. But just to kind of, just to make it very clear, which is, Allah didn't make us as a scientific experiment, so He didn't make us to see what would happen with us, like in a petri dish, right? He made us because everything is a worship of Him, and He didn't make us to see, oh, I wonder what would happen if I do this. No, so that's the issue. So He made us for that case. Why is there going to be evil people? Because, well, to have free will, there has to be evil people. They have to be able to choose to do evil, and doing evil, people who do evil, serves as an imtihan for those who do good. In fact, those who do good, the more imtihan they have, the greater they become. And the greater the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, despite all the chaos around them, they become even more noble than if they never were tested. Why do some people born to Muslim parents? I actually have an argument for this, because I was not born to Muslim parents, which is, I think everyone is tested in different ways. If a Muslim grows up in a Muslim society and believes just because his parents tell them to be Muslim, he doesn't question, and he just follows whatever is convenient in society, well, we have a word for that person. It's in the Quran, al-munafiqeen. Right? They follow whatever is convenient. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. If it's no longer convenient, they don't follow it anymore. And that's different from a sinful person. Before you get worried, am I a munafiq? No, because sinful people are obviously under pressure. But a munafiq will pick what is convenient, like knowingly and happily to do that. And they'll make excuses for that. They make, oh yeah, okay, I'm drinking alcohol, but I'm under a lot of stress, so it's okay. No, it's not. Yeah.
But even not knowing who is Allah and what is our religion is essential in Islam.
So not knowing who is Allah and why here's the thing. Everyone can deduce for themselves Allah's existence. You don't need to know philosophy. A basic kid, when a kid asks where do babies come from, the kid has a basic aql and fitra to ask what causes things. Everyone has that, right? There's enough in this shows that you can be a mushrik and realize that shirk doesn't make sense. And you don't have to be a philosopher, by the way, to know that anyway. There's many people who, many even Christians, who are born into Christian societies, and I've encountered them in Spain and Portugal, and they don't believe that Jesus is God or in the Trinity. And I thought, then how are you Catholic? And they said, oh no, the Catholicism doesn't require you to believe that. I said, well, I'm pretty sure it does. I mean, I'm great you don't. It's great you don't. But I'm pretty sure it does. But they'll say to you, but that doesn't make sense. It's like, well, I agree with you, but that's not a Catholic, right? The thing is this, everyone is tested. There are sincere people amongst who are the Ahl al-Kufar, whatever, the general society, a word for their society, and there are the not sincere people. And amongst Muslims there are sincere people and there are not sincere people. And via imtihan, Allah will determine who's who and knows who's who. And we also know that Allah does not punish someone who didn't know about Islam. And as Ibn Taymiyyah said, if they heard about Islam, but they didn't understand it properly, that Allah might not punish them as kuffar. Only when the hujjah has been established for them that they accept. So anyway, that's most of it, of those points. Unfortunately, the sister asked me something about LGBT and I really wanted to answer it. Although I've mentioned it a few times recently on the BBC I mentioned my response to that. But we can discuss it afterwards. I'm going to be at an event tomorrow for sisters in the morning, and the brother has an event then. So
we've changed that plan. There will be for both brothers and sisters at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we'll have a lecture called How to Deal with Non-Muslims tomorrow at 4 in Burj Al-Sanawar, beside Uthman bin Affan Mosque. The brother Abdullah will stay here, so everyone, we can pray here in the room here, and we can ask more questions with brother Abdullah. We thank you, brother. Barakallah fiqh, and the effort you've made.
Jazakallah. Just a final point. If you go on my website, abdullah.andalusi.com, and you type in evolution, you'll find my response to that there. And if you type in hell, there's a whole article, Is Hell Just? Much more depth and detail. You'll find it there. So barakallah fiqh, brother.
Barakallah fiqh. May Allah reward you for all the effort you made and for making this trip to share with us, inshallah. May Allah put benefit in what you said. Jazakallah.